Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the Mercury retrograde cycle in the sign of Cancer. I hope that you're doing well out there. Hope that you're staying cool wherever you are. It's been kind of a hot one where I'm at, so I'm kind of trying to beat the heat here today. But we're going to spend some time together looking over the synodic cycle of Mercury, looking at when it goes under the beams, when it's cazimi, when it's stationed retrograde, when it's stationing direct. We're going to talk about the sign of Cancer and Mercury in the sign of Cancer. We're going to talk specifically about Mercury in the decans of Cancer 2 and 3, where the retrograde is happening. And then what I'm hoping to do by the end of the show today is take some of the Mercury retrograde through the houses. So if you're wanting some personal advice about what types of things you might want to focus on with Mercury retrograde in your own personal chart, get your chart out, look at your rising sign, and we'll speak a little bit about each of the 12 areas where we could focus our Mercury retrograde energy on. If you are here with me today, please let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. Say hi. Don't be shy. It's always nice to see all of you here in the chat. Okay, a couple announcements before we get going today. Of course, we are talking about Mercury retrograde in Cancer. If you want more personal attention when it comes to your chart, or you need some help with establishing new narratives in your chart, go find me over at spencermichaud.com. This is one of the things that I love to do as an astrologer. This is the work that I love to do, is to help people bring awareness to the things that are operating behind the scenes in their chart or in their lives, whether it's through the types of fate that they're experiencing or through repetitive thought patterns that are causing us to make choices that we might later regret or that aren't leading to the outcomes that we desire. That's really the crux of it, is, are the actions and thought patterns and belief systems that we have getting us where we want to be? And if it's not, how do we start to unpack that, unravel that? In astrology, tarot, the decans, fixed stars, all of these things are really important vehicles and tools for doing that. So if that's something that interests you, go over to spencermichaud.com, click on the Book Now button. Let's set up a session. I have times available for July into August, and I would love to work with you. So check that out. You can also find me over at spencermichaud.com with pre-recorded webinars. If you like my teaching style, I love teaching. I'm a born teacher. I'm a teacher at heart. If you like hearing the style of teaching that I do, I have a number of pre-recorded webinars that really go a long way to help supporting the channel if you want to be a part of that. But if you want to learn the decans, I have a whole decan webinar series going over all 36 decans via 12 webinars. I have a series with my beautiful partner Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo called Dignity and Devotion, where we break down the 7 traditional planets, their significations, how they may operate within different signs. And then some magical remediation, some electional astrology, some astrological magic incorporated within that. And it's a really great series, and Tanya is very, very knowledgeable, and it was a wonderful collaboration. You can also find a webinar I did on stars and cards, which talks about the connections between tarot and astrology. So you can find that at the store, spencermichaud.com. Speaking of Third Coast Mojo, you can find my partner, Tanya, over on Etsy. She has a magical business where she is crafting with the elements of astrological magic, with planetary elections, but also with traditional conjure knowledge and formulations as well. And the combination of those two things is extremely powerful and can help unravel some of the things that might make you feel stuck in your life. One of the things that we talk about with Mercury retrograde is sometimes Mercury things feel a little stuck. Maybe it's harder to communicate. Maybe there's difficulty making important exchanges with others. And that's where, like, working with someone who knows the planets, knows how to harness the best possible outcomes from the planets into physical material, like we see here with Master Key Oil, which has Mercury in Virgo, which is a place that Virgo is exalted. It is its home sign and its exaltation. And Master Key is one that just kind of unlocks the doors to places that we're trying to get into. I wore a lot today trying to learn some things quickly around mercurial significations. I read some really important contextual material from Liz Green and Howard Sasportas in their book, The Inner Planets. Really enjoyed my chapter that I read in that this week, and utilizing material like Master Key oil can be very helpful. She also has other planetary offerings. King Crab is a new one that was just released with exalted Jupiter in Cancer, which might be helpful now that Jupiter has left its exaltation and gone into Leo. Scientific Method is a great one with Saturn in Aquarius if you want to try to remediate some of the challenges around Saturn in Aries, which is its fall, which can lead to some impatience or difficulty seeing with long-range vision because of the pressure that we feel. Scientific Method can be great for that. So check her out over at Third Coast Mojo on Etsy. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, where you will get updates on when I'm going live here on YouTube, and you can get updates on new product releases for Third Coast Mojo. I would encourage you to sign up for both my newsletter and Tanya's for Third Coast Mojo as well. But this is a great way to stay in touch, especially with content creators, as we move into a time frame in history where sometimes the algorithm will show you to certain people or will block you from being seen by certain people. Getting right to the source of your creator's newsletter is a great way to stay in touch and to take the power back to the people and to give power back to the creator rather than having them be at the whims of tech oligarchs. All right, so sign up for that newsletter. And if you want to make a donation or a gift to the channel, you can purchase a super chat while I'm live on YouTube, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and make a donation to the channel that way. It is a great way to help me to continue to do this work, to be able to get the resources I need, like these beautiful books, to do the research and deliver it and interpret it to you and help contextualize it for you so that you can make it useful in your own life. It buys me the gift of time to do this work and this research to be able to continue on with the path that we've chosen here today together. So really helpful that support from the community. Okay. Announcements are done. KP, what's up, KP? Says, hi, Spencer, and all finally able to catch you live. Been looking forward to this. Nice to see you, Karen. Hope everything's going well with you down in Cleveland, Ohio. Cheers to you. Yeah, this will be an interesting one, right? Mercury retrograde. There's a lot of, I don't know, little, I guess, bugaboos about it, like little taboos when we come to Mercury retrograde in the collective consciousness. It's an astrological aspect that a lot of people have heard of, even though they might not know the rest of astrological wisdom. They've heard of Mercury retrograde on some level. So this is one where we can kind of unpack some of the truths behind that, and maybe some of the myths that, maybe the things that make us scared of it for some reason. How do we utilize this in a way that can be constructive, productive, where we feel like we are a little bit more, I guess, in control? Okay, and I don't necessarily mean about controlling our outer circumstances. Sometimes control means that we're working with our inner resources in a way that feels in alignment with our integrity. And I think that's another thing to consider with Mercury retrograde as well. Karen says, definitely feeling it. Sag rising. So it's ruling two of my angles. Oof. Karen, we'll get to that today too. When we break down the rising signs, what I'll do is I'll talk about the topic that Mercury is going to retrograde in Cancer. And then we will take that planet and we will expand it out into what houses it's ruling. So what Karen's referring to here is that Mercury, while it is in her 8th house, okay, in Sagittarius rising charts, it is also hosting both her 7th house of Gemini, okay, and 10th house of Virgo. So 10th house and 7th house topics are going to be connected to the review that is happening in her 8th house regarding shared resources, debt, inheritances, things of that nature. So when we start to connect the dots with that, we start to be able to craft a narrative around it. And those narrative craftings are really important. We'll try to craft the narrative in as positive a way as possible, although we do want to understand some of the challenges that we could face so that we are able to make better choices in the moment. Not only is this Mercury retrograde taking place in one particular sign, but it's hosting the Mars-Uranus conjunction that we're experiencing today into the weekend. So a lot of the severings, cuttings, and separations that we're experiencing can directly be linked back to Mercury in this Mercury retrograde. Complicate is here. This is my twins are Saggy rising too. Nice. Well, hopefully we'll get some some clarity with that, Kate. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Okay, so let's dive into it. And please let me know if you're here in the comments. I want to hear your Mercury retrograde stories. We're getting a little bit of an entry point to Mercury retrograde in the middle of it, right? In the very beginning of the Mercury retrograde. In Mercury retrograde delayed fashion, this broadcast was maybe kind of delayed by maybe a week or two. It's just kind of where it fit within my own personal schedule. But you know, it gives us a little more context because we've already experienced Mercury going under the beams. We are getting very close to the Mercury, or the Mercury hosted Mars-Uranus conjunction. And that can help us be like, oh yeah, that's what he's talking about, right? Because we can see it applied to our own personal lives. And that to me is a really important little bit of information that we can work with. Kate says, with Virgo suns, I do typically see dynamics in their life flow related to Mercury's cycle. Exactly. That's a really important technique in traditional astrology is understanding what's called the guest-host relationship. And a planet that is visiting a sign is like a traveler that is visiting a land or a temple or a different country or a place, someone else's home. And when we know who is responsible for taking care of that person while they're visiting the country, while they're visiting the home, and what is their intentions and what are they doing, right? Like, let's say you're house swapping with somebody, or you're visiting someone and they have an Airbnb. Sometimes they're home and they can answer a lot of questions about where everything is. Sometimes they're off in a distant vacation somewhere and you've got the house to yourself, and they may have an open line of communication to you to let you know where everything is, or sometimes they don't, right? And that can be challenging too. So we really have to make that connection between just not only the sign where a planet's visiting, but the planet that's hosting it. In this case, Mercury is hosting Gemini and Virgo. Tamar Takuya is here. What's up, Tamar Takuya? It says, hi, Spencer. Happy to be able to join live today. Greetings from Germany. Well, welcome, friend. It's been a little while. I hope everything's going well your way across the pond. I am excited that you're joining me here today. Okay, so let's kind of start unpacking this. And thank you, friends, for saying hi. It really does make me feel like we're connecting, you know, like that I'm not just speaking into the void. So just even letting me know that you're listening and your presence it's really it's helpful, and it's encouraging. So thank you. All right, the synodic cycle of Mercury. That is a fancy word, synodic, which is just really referring to Mercury's movement in the sky, its relationship to the sun, which is very important. Mercury generally stays pretty close to the sun, never really ventures more than two signs away, or one or two signs sometimes. And it is, when we're talking about Mercury and its direction, it switches directions more than any other planet. It does a retrograde cycle 3 times a year, generally in the same element. So we're working with some kind of elemental wisdom. In this case, we're working with the element of water. So the emotional realm, the intuitive realm, the connective realm, a relational realm on some level. So this is something that's very heart-centered, that is very like we're feeling this in our emotional body. And we're reviewing these things. And when Mercury goes in and out of visibility, that can be something that is very instructive for when we are feeling more comfortable communicating publicly, or when we have to go into the underworld of our mind, when we go into the subconscious or the unconscious realm to bring something out. This is part of what we're experiencing with this particular Mercury retrograde cycle that is going to come into Cazimi. Is we have Mercury that is in what's called a psychopomp phase. Psychopomp is a fancy word of guide of souls to the underworld or to the land of the dead. In practical terms, what does the land of the dead mean? What does the underworld mean for us? It is a symbol of us going into our past. It is a symbol of us going into the buried deep spaces that we place things that we maybe don't want to deal with in real time, but eventually can never avoid. Sometimes it's the operating system of the of our brains through belief that are operating without us being conscious of it. I've worked with some clients recently where a lot of the discussion that we had was, how do we deal with the three types of fate? Those being Hemarmene, which is the fate that we are born into that is very difficult to change. Like we can't really change our height without extreme effort, or we can't really change who gave birth to us, right? That's Hemarmene. Or the place that we were born is a Hemarmene. That is an unchangeable thing. There are certain events that are fated that we can't avoid no matter what we choose to do. There's the other type of fate, which is called a Nanke, which is roughly translates to ignorance, but that does not necessarily give the entire picture. It really refers to the fate that we create through just being influenced by the planetary, rays, influences, desires, where we are acting without consciousness. To me, an Anke is almost like when we're acting unconsciously, when we're just acting out the drama of our birth chart without any awareness of what we're doing. And then we have the third type of fate called pronoia. And pronoia is the type of fate that we create when we have a conscious awareness and we can try to make a little bit of a better choice, even if the choice is having a different perspective on the Hemarmene that we are forced to experience. Do you see what I'm saying? A lot of times we will experience the type of fate called Hemarmene, the unchangeable fate, and we will resist it. And we will tense up and we will resist and we will try to swim against the current that is happening in our life. That causes suffering, that causes pain, causes suffering, causes us to get exhausted. When we start to flow with the fate that we are experiencing, when we start to make friends with fate, this is the whole tagline for the entire philosophy of our channel. How do we make friends with our fate? And really, making friends with it doesn't mean that we necessarily have to condone every action that everyone does around us. We don't necessarily have to keep doing everything we've always done. It just means that we're coming in alignment with what is possible, with what isn't, and knowing the difference between those two and becoming aware of what we were actually attempting to do and whether the planets are supporting that or not. Okay? Again, there is wiggle room with this. That's why a lot of people practice things like elective astrological magic and things like that to kind of nudge things in the right direction. But it starts with awareness. And magic alone does not create results. Magic sometimes is the catalyst to maybe bring you an opportunity, to unlock a door, maybe to shift a repetitive mindset. But then that allows us to take the practical actions to change our life. And that's where the pronoia or the grace comes in. So when we're talking about Mercury retrograde, we are reviewing some of our repetitive thought patterns. We are reviewing some of our communication styles. In this case, we are reviewing Mercury in Cancer 3. Okay, so let's take a look at Cancer 3. This is going to give us a little bit of an idea of what we're going through here. I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about Cancer 2. Got some nice people stopping in that I want to acknowledge. Stellar Renditions here. What's up, Stella? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way. Ani is joining us. Said Sin equals Sun. Mercury, one sign, 27 to 28 degrees. Hands free today. I love it. Ani, it's nice to see you, my friend. Hope everything's going well your way. Tamartaku says things are going well, though I'm feeling that Mercury on my 10th, sending out job applications has been quite an adventure. Ooh, yes. So Mercury hanging out in Cancer, right, in the 10th, reviewing, trying to shift a narrative potentially. So we'll try to break it down for you today. Leanne is here too. Says, hi, Spencer. Hi, chat. Stopping in from the UK. Hope everyone is well. Nice to see you, Leanne. Hope everything's going well with your way across the pond. I like that we've got some people here today. This is sort of the last, just not to make it personal, but this is the last broadcast before my birthday. So it's kind of like I like celebrating with all of you. Like it's sort of like a little early birthday celebration. My birthday is next Tuesday, so we'll celebrate together here. I love having people in the chat, though. It feels like an early birthday present to me. Okay, let's talk about Cancer 3. We've got Mercury retrograde in the third decan of Cancer. And we are dealing with a decan that is related to, let's get a better banner here. Let's make sure we're So we got Mercury in Cancer 3. There we go. All right, there we go. Mercury is retrograding in Cancer 3, which, if we look at the tarot card, tarot gives us a visualization. The decans are a 10-degree section of the zodiac, for those of you who are new to the decans. It's every 30-degree sign is divided into further 10-degree sections that show us sort of a beginning and a middle and an ending of a story that is playing out. And here we see sort of the ending of a story that began in Cancer 1 with a passionate recognition of something that we care about and want to nurture, with mutually beneficial exchanges, with trying to get the bodily needs satiated, the emotional needs, the nurturing needs satiated. We move into Cancer 2 that we'll talk about a little bit more as we get further on in the broadcast, but where we are meeting up and celebrating with others. We are trying to protect something that we've chosen to nurture. We are trying to allow it space to grow into something fruitful and abundant. And then when we get to Cancer 3, we've kind of satiated that desire. We've satiated a desire. If we want something else, some people would say that it's a luxurious desire. What is the meaning of luxury? Luxury often can mean excess. So if we've got our basic needs met, what we desire after that is potentially excessive. So we may be reviewing where we have excessive desire. Maybe it's excessive desires for material things that we want. Maybe we desire excessive nurturing in a relationship. Maybe we desire someone's time, and they don't have that to give. There's a scarcity versus surplus kind of energy in this decan. So you have themes related to divine discontent. You see someone who is refusing that fourth cup from the hand of the divine. They've had enough. They're already full. Okay, they're folded up. Okay, surplus versus scarcity. We say, I've had enough. I've had enough cake today. I don't need more cake. More cake will make me sick. More time will make me sick. More anything will make me sick. We have themes of apathy, jadedness, and boredom in this decan, where if we've got our basic needs met, sometimes we're like, this isn't really giving me the same satisfaction as it always have. I'm jaded. I have enough. I've done this over and over and over again. I'm bored with this. So we might be asking questions because something in our life has made us feel jaded. Maybe we feel emotionally saturated in some level where we're just like, we can't take on anymore anyone else's feelings, anyone else's drama, whatever it might be. That's why we have Hesed in Bria, which is the Kabbalistic tree of life, Sephira, related to the tarot, okay, on some level. Hesed is a Jupiter Sephira, so expansion, too much emotions. Bria is that world of emotions, that watery realm, right? So we feel emotionally saturated in some area. Luxurious taste and feeling overstuffed, we've talked about that. And the point of diminishing returns, I think that's a great way of contextualizing this. Like I said, some things that are pleasurable at first eventually become something that can be toxic if we have too much of it. So some questions for reflection, just from Mercury and Cancer 3 in general, but especially because it's retrograde, we have the RE words: redo, reflect, reimagine, revisit. These are types of things that we do when we dive into the underworlds of our subconscious. So questions you can ask yourself right away. Where in your life do you feel discontented? Is there an area of your life where you're like, I'm starting to question this. I'm starting to question what I'm doing here. Like we saw Taku talk about 10th house, right? Maybe they're questioning their work life and they're having to ask questions around that. I've been talking with my partner like a lot about how to balance out our lives and our partnership and what responsibilities we take on. She had this retrograde happening in the 7th house. So we had a big conversation about those types of responsibilities. I have this retrograding in my 12th house. We'll talk about this as we go through the houses, but I'm spending a lot of time asking questions of how do I self-sabotage? What things are distracting me from the work that I really want to do? What types of narratives are keeping me from feeling abundant right? Like in my Leo rising case, I have the second and the 11th house being ruled. And there's a lot of old narratives around feeling okay receiving and not feeling guilt around it. And I think that there is a lot of things that we can revisit emotionally with Cancer 3. So where do you feel discontented? What isn't working right now? Do you need more, or do you have enough? Both of these questions can be answered here. There are times when we have, in this decan, not an abundance of something. When we have an abundance of one thing, we may recognize that it is actually creating a scarcity in a different part of our life. Let's say you have an abundance of attention. Like this is the currency a lot of people are striving for these days in the internet age. They want people's attention. Let's say you have more attention than you need, and some of that attention could be negative. And when you're receiving negative attention along with the positive attention, sometimes that can be draining to your sense of peace and well-being. Sometimes negative attention creates inner and outer conflicts. And when you're experiencing that, you are starting to experience a scarcity of peace. So sometimes an overabundance of attention can take away from our peace. Same thing with having an overabundance of money. Of too much money, sometimes you realize that you are taking away from someone else who doesn't have enough. Sometimes when you have an overabundance of food, you realize that your health is starting to decline and you have a scarcity of feeling good within your body. These are the lunar types of phases that we experience in this decan of Cancer, which is related to the daimon Hecate. And Hecate, being the spirit of this decan in the 36 heirs of the zodiac, a fragmentary text from the Hellenistic era, talks about a triple goddess, right? A goddess of the crossroads, where she was able to bring things into being, but she was also a goddess that took things out of existence. So this phasal type of relationship with Hecate, the guide, the psychopomp energy is very, I think, pretty prevalent within Hecate too, which she was also called a torchbearer. She was the spirit that led Demeter into the underworld to find Persephone and light the way. Just as Hermes is a guide of souls to the dead, Hecate plays that role on some level sometimes as well. So how do we start to understand the relationship of balance within our life? I feel like all the later decans, the third decans, sometimes can show us an imbalance with the element that we're working with, an overabundance of that quality. And here we have something where we're understanding that with an abundance on one thing, it can automatically create a scarcity in the other. That's Taoist wisdom too. The excessive part of the yin-yang symbol contains the seed of its opposite, whether it is light or dark. Same thing is true when we're experiencing an excess of lack. This Mercury retrograde could be exposing where you feel dissatisfied because you don't have enough in a certain area of your life. And that may plant the seed to help you to rebalance that area of your life. You know, for example, like my partner and I are facing some challenges with our finances. Our lives changed. My partner has been going through a transition from having a very nice full-time job with benefits and health insurance and all these things to trying to make her life work with a working on her own, like with another kind of like self-employed type of experience. And when you have two people that are working in that environment, that can lead to some stress. So I think that we are trying to reimagine what our lives look like and what choices we make, because we might be facing a scarcity of security that we may have had in the past. We have to change the way that we do things. And this is a question a lot of people are asking in their lives is, I feel a scarcity of love in my relationship. Maybe I have to change my perspective or my behavior, right? This could be something that someone is asking. I feel a scarcity of time. Maybe I'm too busy. Maybe I need to cut out some distractions. This is another thing I've been examining in my own life is as as consistent as I've tried to be with my career and my business and like with this channel, I'm not immune to distractions. And I'm realizing that, you know, post 2020, post pandemic, post everything going online, post the increase of distractibility with social media, with the increase of the nefariousness of the algorithms to try to draw and retain your attention through positive, but mostly through negative means. I'm realizing that I'm having to work through some of the distractions that take me away from what is important to me. And what's important to me is gaining in wisdom. What's important to me is reading the books that I have on my shelves, the lifetime worth of books that I have. What's important to me is spending time in my garden and with my family, and spending time with my clients and with my students, and being of service to my community. All of those things can be distracted from by the attention suck that are our phones, that is social media, that are all those things. So these are some of the things that I'm trying to work through and thinking about severing when it comes to the Mars-Uranus in Gemini area. So I want you to think about, when we're talking about excesses, what might lead to a severing that can restore some balance in your life, because there might be some shocking things that you're ready to release in this Mercury retrograde because you're feeling a lack or an excess in some area. So do you need more, or have you had enough? This is part of the question we ask. Mercury is a planet that destabilizes. It casts doubt. It is the question asker in a lot of ways. What do you do with your surpluses if you have more than you need? How can you make someone else's life better by sharing your excess? If you have more resources than you could possibly ever utilize within your lifetime, how do you become a philanthropist? If your house is full of things, like let's say it's full of clothes that you don't wear anymore, and those clothes are making you feel bad about yourself because they represent a previous size, shape, or time in your life that does no longer exist. They're just wasting space in your closet, blocking you from the types of clothes that would make you feel good in your current body, in your current situation, in your current life. The beauty of that is that those clothes that are no longer appropriate for you may be perfect for somebody else. And if you let them go, you are helping to create a filling in of scarcity for somebody else. Do you see how this exchange works? If we have an excess, we could be the vehicle for alleviating the scarcity for someone else, just as someone else's excess could help us alleviate our scarcity. I feel this very intensely in my neighborhood, which it has a bit of a gift economy built into it. There is a curb culture, a curb score culture in my neighborhood, where people understand that if they put stuff out on the curb, it's going to be gone within, a day or so. And they will post on the neighborhood Facebook page or wherever saying, hey, here's something out on the curb. And people are like, oh, that looks really cool. I need that. I don't have that thing. And then you have this beautiful exchange between neighbors. Things stay out of landfills. We have, things that are recycling around the community, which I think is a great way to be. So what do you do with your surpluses? Is this the lull before a new breakthrough? I think that's a really good question to ask, because as a person who has Mercury retrograde in Cancer 3 natally, I can't tell you, friends, how many times I have felt a dissatisfaction, a discontent, like the figure in this card, okay, before a big breakthrough, where I'm just tired of this. I need to get re-inspired. And this discontent feeling happens right before I experience something that just fills my heart and my soul up, right? So that feeling that you're feeling, that jadedness, that I'm over it feeling, could be the precursor to something beautiful coming into your life. So that can lead you to questions of how do you break through, right? How do you reconnect with a passion? And that transition from Cancer to Leo can speak to reconnecting with a spiritual passion rather than just trying to get physical needs satiated and met. So asking ourselves, what comes next? What are we trying to do next within our lives? Okay, let me check back in with the chat here. Let's see. Oh, thanks, friends. We got some nice birthday wishes here. It says, happy early birthday. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate you. Thank you for that. Ani says, I was referring to the Mercury retrograde cycle. Happy birthday. Thank you, friends. Yep, July 7th. I'm a July 7th Cancer 2 sun. I'm going to be 46 this year. It's time keeps on ticking. But, you know, it's good to be able to celebrate another birthday. I think we take for granted as we start counting the years, like, oh no, it's another birthday. It's like, no, I get to experience another birthday. And I think that's a really healthy perspective. Thank you, Leanne, for the birthday wish. Appreciate you. Kate says, happy solar return. Thank you, Kate. Kate says, questioning how I show up, lack of with participating fully. Well, there you go. Kate, I know Kate's chart, and Kate and I share a rising sign. So in Kate's and my own case, how do we review how we show up for our communities? 11th house, Gemini. And how does that affect our feelings of worth and self-worth? 2nd house. And how do we eliminate some of the things that are negative narratives that are repetitive thought patterns with Mercury retrograding through the 12th house? I think those are things that we can really work on together, Kate. Taku says, yes, you're correct. Mercury is making me reconsider my current career path. There you go. It's because Taku is experiencing this in the 10th house, which is related to our careers, or just our public actions, praxis, they used to call it in ancient civilization. Kate says, I'm definitely recently admitted my own addiction to the algorithm. Same, 100%. And not just to the algorithm. If I'm being completely transparent and authentic, I spend too much time on my phone playing a couple games. I have a game that I've played just to satisfy the collecting bug. I have a game that you just get stuff. You collect things, and like there's a part of me that wants to collect. And that felt like it was kind of healthy, satisfying that for a while. Now it just feels like a job. You know, it feels like a second job where you have these kind of like games where you're just going around collecting resources and redistributing them. And I'm like, that's a job. I could do that in my real life. So I'm thinking of just deleting that one completely. And then there was another one I started that was around, it's called Sky. That one's a little bit more nefarious. And I say that insidious maybe, because there's a strong social element to it. It's not just going around and collecting things, which you do, but there is a whole like, look at this cool outfit that I got. And like you show it off to your friends, and you could talk to your friends, and there's instruments involved. I bought a saxophone in it. I went around in the game playing Careless Whisper. I learned how to play Careless Whisper on the saxophone on this game, which is stupid. But you know, there is friendships that you build up, and that part of it is nice. There is those social relationships. But what happens when you're spending more time in that fantasy world than in your real world responsibilities? What happens when it is an avoidance of your real world responsibilities rather than something that is an oasis from that? And that's a question to ask, the surplus versus scarcity. I think in that regard, I've started setting limits for myself. I've made real friends playing this game. I've built some relationships with people all over the world, which I value. But there comes a time where you have to say, okay, I can play this for 30 minutes, and then I stop, I set a timer, and I'm done. Do you see what I'm saying? It's easy to get lost in these distractions. It's easy to get lost in the alternative realities. And this is coming from someone who has this Mercury retrograde in the 12th house, getting lost in a liminal space. Our phones, video games, alternate realities are liminal spaces. So this is something that we're questioning and maybe needing to sever to restore some balance. Kate says, as a fellow Leo rising, we may be realizing our 12th house self-undoing related to overuse of social media, exactly, and of like escapist things, like games or things like that. We're reevaluating how we cope with the things that we don't want to deal with in life, myself included. I'm a very sensitive soul, and the suffering that we are experiencing in the world right now is overwhelming. And when we are bombarded with it 24/7, sometimes the only way to restore some sanity is to turn down the noise and turn down the volume or go somewhere else temporarily. The key is you have to come back. Remember when, like, Let's say we have Odysseus going into the underworld. Not Odysseus, Orpheus, excuse me. Got my O's mixed up. Orpheus going into the underworld to rescue his love, Eurydice, right? And he has to come back to the real world. He can't stay there in the underworld. And he can't keep looking back to the past or he's going to lose it completely. He has to keep looking forward. The key is we can go into the underworld sometimes. We can go into the liminal spaces of our lives. But we have to be able to come back to reality. We have to be able to ground these experiences back in our real lives. And I think this is going to help facilitate some of that process for us. Kate says Mercury retrograde in Cancer seems like a good time to change our environments to adjust mental health needs. Yes. And Kate, I have a couple things I want to suggest. I'm not sponsored by this company, but I have had some real amazing success with these Loop 2 Switch earplugs and Loop Dream earplugs. And I just want to show you these, friends, because I've talked in the past about being very sensitive to externalized environments. Cancer as a sign is very sensitive to all of the things in its environment. I feel hypersensitized to things. And in the past, I have gotten very anxious and frustrated and angry or disappointed or overwhelmed by all the sensory information that's coming into my life. Noise, smells, temperatures, and noise is one that's a real problem where I live. I live at a stoplight. I live in a neighborhood that is noisy. There's a lot of motorcycles around. There's a lot of just neighbor noise. And I had to start asking the question, how, instead of trying to control every single external factor in my environment, how do I start to take back my own experience of those external factors? And I bought these little, they're called Loop Switch earplugs. And they have 3 different settings that you can switch between. One allows you to continue to engage with others where it's less filtered. One is very filtered. And oftentimes what this has done for me is it just helps eliminate some of that background noise that can just really be difficult to ignore. A lot of people, especially neurodivergent people, like if you have ADHD, for example, little sounds in the background with normal functional brains will be able to filter that out. Sometimes when we have ADHD brain, we can't filter out those background noises. We're extra sensitive. So people on the autism spectrum have issues with this too. And being able to filter that out and focus on the thing, it's kind of like putting those blinders on. It helps you take back some of your experience of your environment rather than just having to control everything in your environment. And that to me is extremely empowering. I have felt so much less anxiety and so much less grinding of the gears since I've gotten both of these. I have a pair for when I sleep too that are a little bit more comfortable when I sleep. They're called the Dream ones. They're a little bit squishier. They have some memory foam elements. You can see them here. Okay. And I'll tell you, it's some of the deepest sleep I've gotten in a long time, because what I'm realizing is I got woken up a lot. I got woken up. The quality of my sleep wasn't very good. And I've been sleeping a lot better. And when you sleep better, I can't tell you, friends, how much better it is for your focus when you are in your waking hours. There is nothing that can be more distracting than a lack of sleep, because you just can't overcome the temptations, like for the algorithm, for the games, for the food, for the need to overcome our resistance to doing the things that we want to do. When you're tired, it's almost impossible. So grokking your sleep and figuring out how to get good sleep and turning down the noise. This to me is also sort of a Mercury retrograde sort of experience. How do we turn the noise down in our lives a little bit? Sometimes turning down the noise means deleting a few apps on our phone. Sometimes turning down the noise means setting boundaries and limitations around what type of content we will engage with when we're online. Sometimes turning down the noise literally means putting something in your ears to make the noise less. This all started too, friends, because I have a neighbor that is waging a battle with the wildlife in her yard, which is very much at cross purposes of what I'm trying to do in my yard, which is welcome it, And we've had to try to find ways to make a compromise. And her compromise, after we had a long discussion, a peaceful one, was putting the siren that was designed to drive away the groundhogs on a timer where it only was on at night. And I could still hear it sometimes, but and my compromise was, I'm going to get these little earbuds that filter out that frequency completely, so that if she forgets and leaves it on, I can still go outside and water my garden and not be angry the entire time I'm doing it. Do you see what I'm saying? I used to be so angry when someone was making noise out in my environment because I was feeling anxiety. I was feeling overwhelmed. And when you feel overwhelmed, that leads to it doesn't lead to inner peace. So this is a long-winded way of saying, how do we start to take back some of our control of our experience of what we're going through, even if we can't control external factors? There's a lot of ways to be able to take back our power when it comes to our experience of something. For some people, instead of buying the Loop earbuds or whatever it is, again, not sponsored. If you want to sponsor me, Loop, you got a customer for life here. But anyway, sometimes people can lower the noise in their life through things like meditation. Sometimes people will lower the noise in their life through trying to tell a new story about their relationship with somebody, so that every time they see them, they're not bracing and like scowling, and maybe their first interaction is one of friendliness rather than one of suspicion. Those are the types of things that can lead to better outcomes too. This is something that Howard Sasportis was talking about. I want to read this to you. Let's read this to you. Kate said, we've got Stella says, I just got words with friends playing Scrabble with my Nana. Nice, nice. Those are fun games, right? Those are ones that challenge our minds. The social ones are the ones I really like, but they're the ones that can be the hardest to detach from too, because of the peer pressure. Kate says, I just got earbuds too. They have a great option to allow outside noise or not. Good. That's a good one, right? I wore my loops. I went out to dinner with my daughter recently, and I wore these at the restaurant. We were outside on the patio, and they had this loud music like right next to us. There's speakers on either side of our table, and I could barely hear anybody talk. And I put those things in, and it helped me to focus on the conversation, and it filtered out that music, and I had a much better time. Rather than being upset about it the whole time, I controlled what I could control rather than changing the external environment. Karen says, those buds would be great for Neptune transit and the accompanying sensitivities. I agree, 100%. Kate says, neighbor with siren sounds sounds like a freaking nightmare. It feels like a nightmare for somebody with sound sensitivity. They also have like a camera system that beeps every 20 seconds. Really frustrating. I can deal with nature sounds. I can't deal with repetitive mechanical sounds that just in general. They are very disruptive for my whatever part of neurospiciness I have, right? Whatever it might be. Okay, let's see. Kate says, I love my groundhogs, the raccoons, bunnies, and skunks. I can't imagine running them off. Neither can I. And it's frustrating. But these are some of the challenges that we have to work through. And Kate, just especially you and I having a Libra third house, we have to sometimes compromise with our neighbors, right? Sometimes we have to find a win-win situation, and we can't always get everything that we want, and we have to compromise. And that was hard for me for a long time. I've got Pluto there too. I've had to transform the way that I interact with my neighbors. And honestly, it's really helped. It's helped me not feel so upset. It's helped me feel more at peace in my body and in my space. And that's through changing myself, not through trying to change other people. If I had gone to this neighbor with metaphorical guns blazing, the outcome might have been very different. But what I did is I came to her with like a bag of Epsom salts. I'm like, hey, Miss Neighbor, would you be willing to try this alternative to get rid of your groundhogs? They don't like this. And I came to her with a gift, and she didn't accept the gift. She's like, I've tried that, whatever. I'm like, well, what's an alternative solution so that we both can have what we want? You can go out on your porch without the groundhogs there. She has some allergy or something, or what she claims. And then I can also go outside and have a peaceful experience too, because we share this space together. So that's the kind of thing you have to do when you have Libra in a particular area of your chart. So we'll do the best that we can. Okay. So let's keep going with Mercury in Cancer 3 here. What I'd like to do is I want to show you, let me see here. I got one more thing here. Mercury Cancer 2. I'll just save that for later down there. What I'm going to do now is I want to take you through the synodic cycle of Mercury. Okay. Let's bring the chart to the stage here. And let's see where the best way of looking at this might be. How about that? How does that look? Can we handle that? A little bit bigger for those of us with difficulty seeing sometimes? Okay, so we want to start, there's different phases of this, and I'm actually going to go back in time, right? I'm going to go back in time. We are going to go back to June the 12th. So let's look at June the 12th, all right? And I'll take you through this because there are different checkpoints. Here we have on June 12th, Mercury at about 16 degrees of Cancer. Okay, it looks a little different on here, but when it exactly goes under the beams of the sun, well, not under the beams, excuse me, when it enters its retrograde shadow, it was at 16 degrees of Cancer. That is a concept related to the exact degree that Mercury is going to retrograde back to. There are some astrologers that believe that the ground that we've traveled since June the 12th, we will need to review or backtrack before we move forward. So one of the checkpoints that I want you to look at is what was going on around the 12th of June and what were you feeling? Because you might have to be traversing new ground around that. You might have to be starting to think about whatever came up. This is the work that you're doing now. That will give you clues, okay? When we see Mercury station retrograde, that happened on the 29th. Okay, so here is Mercury stationing retrograde on June the 29th at 26 degrees. Okay, so if we look here, we'll go forward. Let's see here. Retrograde. Okay, there it is. 29th, 1:35 p.m. 26 degrees Cancer. All right, this was the period where the movement started, the shift started to happen. All right, where Mercury is kind of slowing down and saying, all right, I'm going to switch directions. I was going to read you something that I think is, before we get into the depths of this here, just to close out the thought that I had about controlling our own environment, okay? Because I did a mercurial sideways type of thing here. But I think that this is important enough that I want to be able to speak on it. So let's remove this for a minute and let's go back here. This is from The Inner Planets, Building Blocks of Personal Reality by Liz Green and Howard Sasportas. And it is volume 4 in the Seminars of Psychological Astrology. I really love Liz Green, and I was trying to see her take on this. But Howard Sasportas is very wise in his own regard. And he kind of took the helm of the Mercury chapter in this book. So this is from the beginning chapter called Tricksters, Thieves, and Magicians, The Many Faces of Mercury in Mythology by Howard Sasportas. Now this is really about how do we apply our minds. It says, back in the late 60s and early 70s, I studied astrology in Boston with Isabel Hickey. She taught me something which has always stayed in my mind. If a person or situation is bothering you, try changing your attitude towards it. By doing this, she said, one of two things will follow. Either the problem will alter in such a way that it no longer bothers you or feels like a problem, or it will just go away and disappear entirely. So if a person is getting on your nerves, maybe you have to try to change your attitude towards that person, holding them more in a positive light or a new perspective. According to Isabel, the person will then change in such a way that he or she doesn't aggravate you as much, or in some cases, the person will vanish from the scene so that you no longer have to deal with the culprit. The rule is that if you alter your attitude, you alter the whole situation. Such is the power of the mind, the power of the mental plane. As Rosicrucians are fond of saying, thoughts have wings. Over the years, I've followed Isabel's advice on numerous occasions, and I was amazed to see how frequently it works. You should try it yourself with something in your life which is bothering you. But I do have one condition and one stipulation to add. I'm not sure if it is always appropriate to try too quickly to rid yourself of things that are worrying or upsetting you. This smacks of running away from a situation that could offer you valuable lessons or insights. It might be more useful to your psychological growth or development if you first took the time to explore why a person or situation is pushing your buttons or triggering off your complexes. This is really an important statement for Mercury retrograde, understanding the why behind something. Where were we? So rather than immediately trying to do away with the source of your irritation, you ought to go inside or into the underworld, right? And ask yourself such questions as, why am I reacting in this manner? Does the person represent a facet of my nature which I find loathsome or embarrassing? And therefore I'm irked to see him or her behaving in that way? These questions can help you probe into what Jung would call your shadow. By honestly examining your reactions to a problematic person or situation, you can learn a great deal about repressed or denied aspects of your nature, which need to be brought into the light of consciousness and worked on. In this sense, the person or circumstances which are bothering you have something important to teach you. To alter your attitude too quickly as a plot to rid yourself of the problem could be seen as a psychological cop-out. Nevertheless, I still believe that there are times it is right and useful to apply Isabel's suggestions, but by trying to fulfill previously mentioned conditions first. Let's see. Okay, so how do we change our minds, right? How do we understand that our thoughts are creating these narratives, that our thoughts are creating beliefs, that sometimes the experiences we had start to become transformed into beliefs? Those could be said to be lunar on some level. Maybe that we have things that we experienced in our environment. Maybe we have things that we experienced in our past that eventually we internalize our ways of coping, our ways of protecting ourselves from further hurt and trauma. And when we have Mercury retrograding in Cancer, we get to re-examine those traumatic experiences and the behaviors that they have ingrained within us. I often tell the story on this channel about my relationship with money in the beginning of my life, witnessing a family that owned a business in Chicago that subsequently fell victim to their desire for more and more and more, and ran the company into the ground by abusing the company resources and fractured the family relationships because of their greed. That was juxtaposed by being raised also in another family. I went back and forth between two households that were extremely frugal, that were extremely dismissive of that excessive lifestyle, and the being ferried back and forth between those two environments. One family would like buy you something on a visit. You'd go back to the other family and they'd say, why did you get spoiled like this? They just spoil you every time you're over there. Give me that. I'm taking that away. You go back and they're saying, why did they take that away? You deserve this. And it's just this back and forth. And it causes a complex of like, am I allowed to have anything ever? Am I a bad person if I have anything nice? Like, those are the types of questions that we have to unravel in our psyches to be able to feel comfortable moving forward. This is just an example of my own personal journey. But you may have something like that within you, where maybe there is something that was a conflict growing up, where you had more time than you needed, but then you felt guilty about spending time somewhere. Maybe you also had a similar experience of having excess in one area of your life, but then feeling some shame around it. These are things that we can examine with the retrograde stationing that started on the 29th. Now we go back here to the chart. Let's go back here. I like this. This view is pretty good for the most part. When we take a look at what we're dealing with here, we have the retrograde that started on the 29th. And recently, yesterday, Mercury went under the beams of the sun on the 2nd. Okay, so here is the July 2nd, under the beams, where we have Mercury in a place where it is starting to go into the underworld, where Mercury becomes invisible in the sky, in the evening sky, right? Mercury was called an evening star because it was rising after the sun, and it became visible at night when the sun set. Now Mercury, as it is apt to do, has gone invisible. It is working behind the scenes. It is a messenger. It is an intermediary between worlds. It is very comfortable in the liminal spaces. So Mercury is entering into the liminal space. And oftentimes when Mercury goes under the beams or emerges from the beams and become visible again, they would call that a moment of phasis, an omen that is speaking. In my own personal experience, my partner and I yesterday had like a, let's vision what we're going to do for the summer into the fall, like one of these planning meetings. And some things were revealed where it revealed some imbalances in our life and in our relationship to resources and our relationship to each other. And it revealed some things that we need to work on as a partnership, and we are committed to working on. And it is probably the impetus for changes that will come at the Mercury cazimi and when Mercury emerges from under the beams. But sometimes what happens is a breakdown when you get to Mercury retrograde or Mercury direct under the beams. It is the breakdown of an old cycle, especially in the retrograde phase. It is the planet taking to its sickbed. It's the realization that maybe what you've been doing isn't working. You know, for us, it was a realization of like, you know, we're just not getting the return on the investment of time and resources that we are hoping for that will allow us to take care of the responsibilities we have in our life. It's not that we don't enjoy our life. It's not that we don't enjoy our work. It's that we might have to make adjustments to all of these things on how we spend our time, where we're putting and investing our resources and time and energy, how we are showing up for our communities, how we are showing up for the exchanges of time and information for the resources that would pay for our mortgage and things of that nature. Those are all things that you can have, hopefully, peaceful discussions about with your partner or your family, that sometimes you have to go through the gates of hell to do that. Do you see what I mean? I mean this metaphorically. I mean this like you have to go past Cerberus, the three-headed dog. You may have to navigate those spaces gracefully with skill, so you don't become consumed by them. And I think that the experience we're having this week is identifying some of the things that might be getting in the way of balance, happiness, peace, of having enough, or having, you know, being able to share what we do have and then have a balanced reciprocal relationship around it. So really think about this week if there was some breakdown that happened, or if there were questions that were being asked that were difficult questions. Sometimes these questions aren't fun. When we identify a scarcity or an excess, you know, when we identify something that we are doing too much of that's making us sick, it's sometimes it's hard work to stop the addiction. Sometimes it's hard work to change the patterns. You know, like one of my biggest problems as a Taurus moon type person, and quite frankly, as a Leo rising, as a fixed rising person, when I get ingrained in a habit, it's very difficult for me to change. For example, I've been doing these live streams, friends, once a week, generally, between an hour and a half and 4 hours of material for about 8 years straight. And I will take a break maybe once every 4 months. And it's very difficult for me to change the way that I do the work that I do. And on some level, I think the work is valuable, and that's why I keep doing it, because I like what I do. But in changing times, in algorithmic suppression times, you might have to try some new things. So if you see me trying some new things on the channel, maybe some shorter form content, maybe some kind of, I don't know, membership system or Patreon thing. I know I've been saying this for a long time, but it really just has to happen just for my survival. It's an experiment, right? It's an experiment. And how can you in your life start experimenting with whatever has come up over the course of this past week, whatever has started to break down? You might get some really important information when Mercury cazimis on the 12th. So this is the next part of the phase. So we have the breakdown phase going under the beams. Mercury is getting ready for a rebirth. It's the breakdown of the old cycle, okay? And then on the 12th, you could see here at 20 degrees of Cancer, we have the seed of the new cycle being planted. Cazimi means in the heart. The sun is, when it's under the beams of the sun, Mercury is having the dross of the old cycle burned away. It could feel like a flaying on some level. Like, oh my God, we've got to release all this stuff. It could be painful. When we get into the heart of the sun, we've got that moment of clarity, that moment of vision of saying, so this is why I've been going through this. This is why this has felt this way. Here is a seed being planted to be able to deal with this scarcity versus surplus question better, right? Then what we have here, we have another sort of touch point in the Mercury cycle that I think we should acknowledge. We have the new moon in Cancer. Okay, once you get to the 14th, you've got a new moon right in this decan. See here? So here's the new moon at 21 degrees of Cancer on the 14th. So the way that I see this story playing out, you've got the breakdown, the difficult conversation, the realization of some scarcity or excess in your life, July the 2nd. You can trace that all the way back to July the 12th when it entered its shadow. And you have another touch point when Mercury stations retrograde on the 29th of June. Under the beams, the crisis moment, the Cazimi, the aha moment, the seed being planted of illumination, of pronoia, of consciousness, of bringing something to light. To me, the Cazimi moment is almost like Hecate being the torchbearer in the underworld. There's something that is illuminating about something you've repressed, something that you have shoved underground that you don't want to deal with. And that illumination process can lead to a new start at this new moon, where that seed of illumination can help you to make a new start in your action life, not just in the thinking life. New moons are seeding the lunar body that transmits celestial energy to the physical plane, solar consciousness into a body. So you might be planting the seed of actually trying to reharmonize whatever has come to light. After that, we have Mercury stationing direct. Let's fix this here. I've got a timer in here. There we go. We have Mercury stationing direct on the 23rd. Okay, so once we get that new moon phase, we have the direct motion of Mercury on the 23rd. There we go. Sorry, I'm skipping it around here, but 16 degrees. That's right when Mercury entered into its shadow form, or shadow phase, I guess you could say. And it's starting similarly in timing to Jupiter going into its Cazimi phase. So the realizations that you might have had about scarcity and surplus, the ideas and questions that you're asking, might actually start leading towards a rebirth in your visibility or in your ability to take action towards playing a new role, being able to find a new passion with Jupiter Cazimi coming. So we want to keep that in the back of our mind. Mercury will emerge as the morning star the day afterwards. So it'll emerge from under the beams, okay, with separation of 15 degrees and become visible. The actions that we seeded at the new moon and at the Mercury Cazimi start to take on some tangibility, right? And that we're getting closer and closer to the eclipse season with this as well. Finally, Mercury will exit its retrograde shadow on August the 6th, okay? In between that time, we have a full moon in Aquarius, really trying to figure out what our role is within the collective and as an individual. At that full moon, we have the Jupiter Cazimi happening as well. We'll talk more about that in its own broadcast. And then on the 6th here, we have Mercury exiting its retrograde shadow at about 26 degrees of Cancer. So this is where we're really seeing the movement starting, okay? And that's going to help us to get closer to whatever realizations that we need to have by this August 12th new moon solar eclipse with K2 involved, of releasing something and being able to plant a new seed for releasing our resistance to something. To me, this eclipse says, how do you plant the seed to stop fighting something? You know, with the lunar nodes shifting signs, the drain is going to be in Leo 3, where we stand our ground at all costs. We defend a belief at all costs. We may have to learn when to quit around this series of eclipses and these nodal axes. When do we let go and say, I'm going to give up my individual desire, subjective perspective, a belief that I'm defending at all costs, to move on to something that's more appropriate for me in this time frame, this life, whatever it is, this phase of life. So you may get some realizations about that when Mercury exits its shadow, preparing you for the eclipse energy. Okay. Let's see. Yes, I said I had the book. Yes, I did. A great strategizing moment, Kate says. Yeah. The new moon. Absolutely. I agree. That's a great time to set intentions with this Mercury retrograde, as is the Cazimi. But I do think that the Cazimi will give us the ideas. The new moon will give us the opportunity to start actually planting seeds and taking actions on it. And then we can see the results when Mercury emerges from the beams and then finally exits its shadow. We'll be traversing new ground. So that's kind of the synodic cycle of Mercury, the different phases. Mercury retrograde isn't just one particular thing. It's not just when it goes retrograde and direct. There is the phasis moment when it goes in and out of the beams. There's the Cazimi moment when it is renewed in the heart of the sun. And then, you know, for some astrologers, we have the retrograde shadow and escaping the shadow. There's some traditional astrologers that don't use that, but it is a technique that is, I guess, at least worth exploring and seeing if there's something to it. I don't like to dismiss techniques before I've tested them, whether they're from a certain era or not. I think that the way that we really get clarity is testing these things with our experience. I would also say a secret to this on some level, friends, is entrainment. When we entrain ourselves to the language of the cosmos, whatever those techniques are, we allow ourselves to be communicated with in those terms. And if you start entraining yourself to a combination of modern or traditional techniques, chances are you could be communicated in that language. I really do believe that. The Jeffrey Cornelius moment of astrology and the Diane Scaff book, I think it's The Oracle Speaks, really kind of helped me shift my perspective on that. It changed a rigid thought pattern saying there has to be one right astrology and everything else is wrong. So it's saying, no, there were times in the past where people read the entrails of animals to get the same information. And they had entrained themselves to that. And that's not to say that they didn't get some predictions right when they were doing it. It's just that we've entrained in a slightly different way. And as we learn new systems of knowledge, we can entrain with different layers, right? I don't necessarily discard the knowledge that I receive from an older pattern that I entrain to. It becomes more refined, in my opinion, with the more knowledge and the more systems I'm able to overlap. Sometimes we have to discard something that just obviously isn't working. But other times, more nuance. And nuance, to me, leads to more accuracy. Okay. Kate says, you know how you develop film in a dark room? It'll be a process until you reveal the image in the light of day. There you go, right? You take the picture, maybe when it is the Cazimi moment, maybe. And then when it's processed and revealed, the image is revealed, that's when Mercury is going outside the beams. I like that. That's a good one. Kate says the ideal, what you're working towards, you don't really know for sure during the process. Exactly. And this is a very intuitive Mercury retrograde. This is one where you're going to have to trust your intuition. You may be trying to work through a feeling more than a rational problem. It might be working through something that you feel in your body, you know. I know another thing that I've been going through since Mercury retrograded is changing my diet up a little bit. One of the things I was noticing with my sleep, beyond just the noise with the earbuds and things like that, is if I ate something that didn't agree with me, I was really having some trouble sleeping. Like, I have a lot of difficulty with sugar and with gluten and FODMAP type stuff. And if I eat anything like that, if I eat too much bread or too much cheese or too much sugar, I will, even if I sleep well or get 8 hours of sleep, I wake up with like inflammation in my shoulders and my back. Everything hurts. And I've really started to be like, I just can't eat that stuff anymore. I can't eat that and expect a good night of sleep. So reviewing what goes into my body and how it makes me feel, how it makes my lunar self feel, has been a exploration too, and come to some really positive insights. And with some little shifts, I've felt a lot better. So those are some other things you could work with as well. All right, friends, let's do this. Let's take a little stretch break. And then what I'll do is I'll quickly take you through the rising signs. Okay. How about that? Do me a huge favor. If you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, welcome. We do this generally once a week, oftentimes on Friday afternoons, Eastern Central Time, usually 1 or 2 p.m. Sometimes it shifts a little bit. That's why you should have the notification bell on and subscribe to the email list. If you want to support the work that I'm doing here, you can make a donation with a super chat, or you can go to Buy Me a Coffee, or you can sign up for a reading, or you can buy products from Third Coast Mojo. All of those things. Support the channel. Help us stay in business. Help us doing all of these things while trying to maintain our integrity. This has been my cross to bear, is how do I navigate a world that feels like it is becoming increasingly enshittified, and where we're being asked to do more and more things that are out of alignment with our values to survive. Some of that due to wealth inequality and kleptocracy and things of that nature. Something that I question a lot. Like, how do we live ethically in a world that is asking us to do unethical things? For example, like, how do we live in an online space when the technology that we're using is increasingly becoming damaging to the planet and our ecosystems? Those are questions that come up during all of this. So not an easy answer, but your support and your donations help us to stay truer to those ethical values. And I know everybody is struggling right now, but thank you so much for people who have been able to support the channel in whatever form. Easiest thing to do, though, just be here. Just like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment on it. That helps too. So cheers to you, friends. All right, let's take this through the rising signs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back on the screen here. You can make me small, chart big. We'll just start in the beginning. We'll start Aries rising. And what I'll do is I'm going to go back to the current astrological chart. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift it around various hours to put the rising sign on the chart ascendant, or putting the sign that we're talking about on the ascendant. So here we're going to start Aries rising, right? We'll see how this works out today. I've done a few things like this in the past, but we'll see how you like it. Aries rising, we've got the Mercury retrograde in the 4th house, and it is hosting the 3rd house, and it is hosting the 6th house. Okay. Just a couple things that stick out. Aries rising has Saturn moving through your 1st house right now. You've got a lot of pressure to move in an independent direction, to state what your values are, to be able to figure out what is in a representation of yourself or of someone else. Now, the other factor that I want to kind of just highlight in these charts is, where is the Mars-Uranus conjunction happening for you? And because Mercury is hosting this too. So here is just a 2-minute way of thinking of Mercury and our Mars, Uranus, and Gemini coming together. Mars likes to sever and separate. Uranus does things that are somewhat unexpected, like a bolt of lightning, a shocking awareness. To me, Gemini represents not only communication, but things that take us away from our goals. It is a diversion type of thing. To me, Mars conjuncting Uranus says, what distractions can you eliminate? What options can you eliminate to maybe unexpectedly to move you forward on your goals? Okay, and you may have to analyze where you are experiencing either lack or excess via Mercury in Cancer 3. So for Aries rising, you have Mercury retrograding through your 4th house related to family history, roots, your living situation, your parents, okay? And you could be reviewing how you deal with feelings of dissatisfaction in that area and asking questions about that area of life. And it will have an immediate impact on your 3rd house related to siblings, neighbors, intuitive wisdom that arises from within rather than from an orthodox spiritual tradition. Like that house is also associated with the heretic. It is also going to have an effect on your 6th house, which astrologers would talk about as a place of misfortune that is random. Could be injuries or illnesses. It could be work that you are doing behind the scenes that you're not getting a lot of credit for. So to be able to make shifts in your daily habits, your routines, your intuitive wisdom, in relationship with siblings, neighbors, in ways of pursuing education, and in regards to potentially your health, you may have to ask some questions about your living situation or how you are taking responsibility with your family members, with your parents, etc. And you could be feeling a lot of pressure to act on your own volition with Saturn in Aries. Now, another thing to keep in mind, friends, is Saturn is going to retrograde pretty soon too. We will talk about that in a future broadcast, but around the 26th, on the 26th of July, Saturn's going to retrograde as well. So for you Aries rising, Saturn is going to bring some things up for questioning as far as who you are as an individual. Okay. Let's see. Misinformed Emotions says, I missed information about the groundhog, having issues with them, and mice. Misinformed, the earlier story was me dealing with a neighbor who was having groundhog issues and them putting a perpetual noise device on to drive them away that was driving me crazy. And me, instead of lashing out or, being upset about it, I had a conversation with them that tried to find a win-win situation, but I also got some earplugs so that I could enjoy the outdoors without going insane. For context. All right, let's go to Taurus rising. We're not going to spend too much time on each sign. We're just going to give you a little overview. And let's clear the decks here, and then we'll go to Taurus. Okay, so here's Taurus rising. Now everything starts to shift over. All right, so here we have the Mercury retrograde in the 3rd house, and it is hosting the 2nd, and it is hosting the 5th. Now, one interesting little thing is that Mercury will have a line of sight to the Virgo house, but it doesn't have a line of sight to the Gemini house. It has a secret relationship potentially via Antisha, which is sort of like a secret relationship between the planets. But it doesn't have an open and direct line. And that's kind of important because we have the Mars-Uranus conjunction happening where the things that are going on with Mercury aren't necessarily conscious, but there is a secret line of communication potentially between them. So with Taurus rising, you are reviewing your relationship to siblings, your relationship to daily habits and routines, which is a 3rd house signification, okay? Like the short journeys that you take in your life all the time. You may be reviewing your trusting your own intuitive wisdom, your own goddess wisdom. 3rd house was called the house of the goddess, the joy of the moon. It could be where you're receiving intuitive messages from the divine that aren't necessarily spoken to in an orthodox spiritual tradition, and you could be going through some kind of issues with that are having an effect on your narratives and your stories related to your money, your resources, your self-worth, your values, which are second house significations, and potentially your creative process. Maybe this is related to your children. Maybe it's also related to sexuality. It could be related to how you seek pleasure in the world. I would say also Taurus risings could be asking a lot of questions about their friendships, their personal friends. Like, how do they eliminate some of the distractions that may be financial? Like, so here's an example. Here's one story that we could craft for a Taurus rising. Let's say you're reviewing, let's say you have a bunch of friends that like to go out every Saturday night and they like to spend a lot of money at the bar. And you might be saying, you know what? I just am not into that. I can't afford it. It is making me feel sick. It's not necessarily what I want to be doing with my life. It's taking away my energy from the things that are important to me. I come home hungover, my wallet's empty, and I'm having difficulty affording the other things that are important to me because my friends have been encouraging me to go out to the bar and spend all my money. Now, this is just an example. This is not something I'm going through personally. This is an imaginary example for a potential Taurus rising where you have Mercury retrograde in the third of friendships, asking about questions of excess versus surplus. You have Mars and Uranus in the second, cutting out a distraction or cutting out something that you might normally use to self-soothe, and also reevaluating with the South Node in Virgo in the fifth house, how you seek pleasure. So this is something that I think really asking yourself about peer pressure, whether it's sibling pressure, peer pressure, daily habits and routines, and how can you cut out something that is distracting you that you might be spending money on. Misinformed says a lot of construction going on in my community, smallest state everywhere. Yeah, and if you missed the first part of the broadcast, friend, I have these new earplugs that I'm really enjoying. They're called Loop Switch earplugs, and they really just turn down the noise and the volume on everything. Construction is one of the things that drives me insane. If I'm trying to work and there's construction noise, I just blow a gasket. And these are the types of things that turn the noise down on that in a way that can just help you relax. And so if you've got things going on, you can't always control whether someone's going to fix the roads outside your house or be doing tree work, but you can control your experience of it, right? And that's what we were talking about earlier. All right, so Taurus rising, reevaluate friendship relationships, daily habits and routines, how it relates to either your children or how you seek pleasure, and maybe try to consider eliminating something that you spend money on that isn't serving you anymore. We go to Gemini rising. Now, Gemini rising is interesting because we have the Mars-Uranus conjunction in your first house. We have the Mercury retrograde happening in the second house, hosting the first and the fourth. Okay. So the Mercury retrograde, oops, let me put the right thing on here for Gemini rising. There we go. The questions that are being asked are potentially financial, potentially related to self-worth, potentially related to your skill set, which are all second house. I would also say that second house is the mouth. It is the door out of Hades, okay? But also it is what we are feeding into the body. So oftentimes second house can be the things that we eat. So you might be even reevaluating your diet, Gemini rising. But the diet can also be the skill set you have, what you spend your money on, how you value yourself. All of those things are up for debate, question, etc. They could be leading to some changes in your living situation, with fourth house being Virgo, and with your relationship to your family. Maybe some of the pressure that you're feeling to eat or to spend money, like we were saying, or to be excessive, is related to family pressure. Okay, and now that you've got the South Node there, or family narratives, old family structures and narratives, maybe old family trauma, and if you release some of that, maybe you won't have to go make yourself sick with the things that go into your body or by overspending or something like that. And that could lead to eliminating distractions and in in yourself, in your body, in your character with Mars, Uranus, you could be saying, I need to change the way that I communicate with others, the way that I speak with others, the way that I consume and share information. You might be saying, I just need to focus on one particular thing rather than splitting my attention in 1,000 different directions. And that could feel really jarring as a Gemini rising, because oftentimes we want to keep our options open when we have a really prominent Hermes type of rising sign or something like that. But this could be the time to focus, to say, you know what, I can't do all of the things. I can't buy all the things. I can't eat all the things. It's having a negative effect potentially on my family life, on my living situation. And this could be a way to reevaluate some of those things. Javier says, loving these horoscopes. Oh, thanks, friend. I'll do my best. Thank you for clarity. Oh, you're welcome, Misinformed. Appreciate that. Okay, so Gemini rising, I'm just going through quickly, just little tidbits here. So forgive me for going so fast, but I kind of have to. I'm practicing doing smaller bits because I tend to be long-winded, and I just see so much context that this is actually somewhat difficult for me. I have done this in the past, but it takes a really long time for me, because to me, isolating parts of the chart is not intuitive. I see the chart as a whole, and it's really difficult to speak on everything that's happening in the chart at once. So forgive me for if I'm missing some parts of it. But if you're a Cancer rising, you have the Gemini, or the Mercury retrograde, excuse me, in your first house. It is hosting the Mars-Uranus conjunction in the 12th, and it is helping us to ask questions about the third house, where the South Node is hanging out for a few more days. Cancer rising is probably asking a lot of questions about how they give and receive care to others. There may be something where you are giving too much of your emotional resources away, and you need some more self-care. You need some more help. You might be asking questions on how to ask for help. I think sometimes we can say Cancer rising, but also there is some overlap with sun signs with these too. Like, I'm feeling, as I'm delineating this, I'm feeling a little bit of this as a Leo rising, but a Cancer sun. Like, learning when to ask for help, learning how to receive, learning how to balance the giving and receiving. It's not something that's easy for a lot of Cancer types. A lot of Cancer types are comfortable giving, but they are not necessarily comfortable receiving. This is something I've had to really work through, is not feeling guilt around receiving. So Cancer rising may also be feeling this. It could be having an effect on your perspective of your daily habits, your routines, your intuitive wisdom, your relationship with your neighborhood and your friends could be up for debate and challenge right now, or change, especially with the South Node there. You might be trying to eliminate distractions with Mars and Uranus coming together in your 12th house, or anything that undermines your self-esteem. A lot of times Cancer will undermine self-esteem from, a lot of it comes through communication. A lot of it comes through, because our feelings are so strong, we sometimes have trouble verbalizing what we're feeling, and we can feel awkward communicating those things. And how do we eliminate some of the negative feelings about communicating? How do we eliminate the things that pull us away from being the best version of ourselves? And how do we start to eliminate some of the undercurrent of repetitive narratives that are pulling us away from self-empowerment? That, to me, is what Cancer rising is looking at here, is how do we eliminate some of the repetitive thought patterns that are kicking around in the back of our minds, and start to bring some balance to giving and receiving in a balanced way. Okay. Devin is here. What's up, Devin? Says, hi, Spencer. At the hospital with my Cancer rising 90-year-old grandma right now. Oh, my goodness. I hope everything's okay, Devin. I hope that she is she's going through a Mercury retrograde in the first, right? Potentially having an unexpected hospital visit with Mars and Uranus in the 12th house. 12th house is associated with hospitals. Hope everything's going okay with you, Devin, and that your grandma's getting the care that she needs. And yeah, sending you love and care. And for Grandma Malone over there. Okay. So that's Cancer rising. Let's move on to Leo rising. Leo rising, put Leo on the ascendant and change the banner. Leo ascendant, I say we because it's me and you and Kate and some other folks. We have this Mercury retrograde happening in the 12th house, hosting the Mars and Uranus conjunction in our 11th, and also influencing our second house resources, money. Leo rising, really asking questions about how we engage in the liminal spaces in our life, how we are dealing with any distractions that may come from our communities, whether our relationship to the societies and groups that we're a part of, whether we have negative belief patterns around our finances or around fitting in with a group. I've been kind of mulling around a potential opportunity to get involved in a group organization for a teaching opportunity. And I'm having to work through some of my own negative self-talk around losing freedom, if that makes sense, by being part of a group. Those are questions that could come up as we're going through our Leo rising experience of this. I know as a Leo rising myself, I'm asking a lot of questions about my finances. With the South Node there, draining out resources that would have been supporting me in the past. And friends, I've been doing this work for like almost 8 years now in a similar form. And it's just changed. Like the algorithms changed, the world has changed, attention spans have changed, corporate tech has changed, AI has changed things. Sometimes the algorithm would serve me up to hundreds and hundreds of people doing the same exact thing that I'm doing now. That is where the numbers are reduced by a significant portion. I don't think I'm doing anything differently than I did. It's just circumstances have changed. So when that happens, you have to ask questions like, do I need to change with the changes in my environment? Okay, so that could be related to finances with Leo rising. It could be related to your involvement within your society, within your group. You could be making a split from a group. There could be something where you're unexpectedly severing ties with a community or something like that. I know I'm seriously considering severing ties with a game that I'm playing that is a distraction that keeps me from doing some of the things that I want to do in my life, that I want to free up more time for what's important to me. I'm thinking of severing some of my social media type of things because I'm just tired of it. I don't feel like I'm getting any value out of the noise, right? I've also been like literally trying to reduce noise in my environment by figuring out what I can control. I've also been asking myself a lot of questions about my relationship with communities and my relationship with money and self-worth. Those are all up for debate, and seeing how I may self-sabotage in that regard is part of the conversation. So I'm just speaking from experience, but hopefully as a Leo rising, those conversations can be useful for you. The other thing with Leo rising is you got Jupiter and Venus in your first house, both benefics in the first house. That's some pretty good fortune personally, and especially for your body. I'm feeling as good in my body as I've felt in a long time just by changing my diet and by having an ability to control the level of sound that I experience. So you might be having a renaissance with your body, but now we have to try to think about how we can feel more comfortable in our headspace. Let's see. Devin says she's been changing living situations. So spot on third house stuff. There you go, right? The third house can also represent, so we're talking about Cancer rising grandma here for Devin. The third house also represents our, our everyday environment, like the neighbors that we have. So, she's been probably changing like the neighbors and associations and daily habits. All of that stuff is third house. Complicate says, as a Leo rising, my plan is to develop psychic communication or self-regulation of doom scrolling. Okay. Psychic communication. So that you don't have to get on social media. You're just going to communicate psychically with everybody. That's one way. Here's Kate. I'm going to send you a meme psychically right now. Let's test it out. You tell me what I'm sending you. All right. Who is it? All right. I sent it to you. See if you can receive it. And so I just psychically sent a meme to Kate, and maybe this will help her get off of social media. Maybe clarify with that a little bit more. I'm just being silly, but I do think it's a good idea though to regulate the doom scrolling, and maybe we do need to find alternative ways to communicate with one another. I do think that we can have communication in liminal spaces, but let me know if you received the specific meme I had in mind. I'm curious if it worked. Kate says, "Oh no, hope grandmother be okay." Us too, friend. Devin says, "Do you speak?" Well, you do speak against the machine, so I'm sure that doesn't help your exposure. That's a great point, Devin. I tend to be critical of the hand that feeds us here. I sort of bite the hand that feeds. I am critical of the very platforms that I am inhabiting, and that probably doesn't do me a lot of favors when the algorithm identifies that criticism and then tries to suppress it. I'm not sure what the solution is there. I really am trying to figure that out, because I don't think I'm going to change my opinion on that anytime soon. And maybe it means I need to do more in-person stuff or whatnot. I don't think it means I need to shut up or like censor myself. I don't think I could do that anyway. So we'll see. Maybe it requires the community here sharing the stuff. If the algorithm isn't going to share this work, maybe you guys need to share it. Why don't you share this with other people? Hype it on YouTube, like it, share it with your friends, repost it. All of those things can be helpful. So if the machine itself won't do it, maybe we have to be the engines of it. Just thinking outside the box. Kate says, I'm halfway joking about my plan. Only halfway. I have Venus 16 degrees Capricorn, and Mercury is connecting some dental work. I agree, Devin. That's the exact thing that gets buried. Dissent, right? And I feel like it's my duty to dissent. That it is part of my ethical value to speak on some of these things. So it puts me in a tough spot, and I don't really have a great solution. Sid the Slow. There you go. I don't know what that's referring to. Are you sending me Sid the Sloth memes? Oh, okay. The guy from Ice Age, right? Maybe close. I was sending you a Gandalf meme where Gandalf was at the rave, and he's like, "I'm sorry, Frodo, I was delayed," and his delayedness was like him like at Coachella or something. But maybe there's some overlap there. Maybe. Right. Kate says, maybe it means you say, "I digress" more. It could be. Yeah, that could be a solution. We'll figure it out. We'll as a community, hopefully we'll come together to figure out how to be able to share our authentic selves, even if our authentic selves aren't in alignment with the way that technology and society is trying to feed us or gaslight us into, I guess you could say. So we'll see. All right. So that's our Leo rising one. Let's go to Virgo rising. Virgo rising. This is one where you have Mercury ruling your ascendant, which can be felt even more powerfully. And again, test this out with your sun signs too. Some of the advice I'm giving could be relevant for Virgo suns as well. So Virgo rising, you have Mercury retrograde in the 11th house, bringing up a lot of questions about how you emotionally interact with the groups that you're a part of. Maybe there is something where you're questioning your involvement in a group that you thought at one point you shared values with, but maybe their values of the group have changed, and you might be trying to figure out a new identity around it. That could be shaking up some of your sense of self and how you show up in the world and what your role is potentially. South Node, conjoining the ascendant or moving through the first house, there's been a lot of probably releasing of old identities. A lot of times Virgo types, Virgo risings, Virgo suns, Virgo Mercuries, etc., will identify with their work, and you might be changing the role that you have in your job. You might be changing your identification with the work. You might be saying, I am more than the role that I'm performing within this community, within this job, within whatever, and releasing attachment to the old role. A lot of things that Virgo struggles with is the form that something is taking, and sometimes the blindness and the overly myopic perspective is not seeing the essence of what that form is trying to contain. So the form changes. And this might be a time where the form and your relationship to your public persona, life, how you show up in the world is needing to change. Maybe there is instead of just looking for a new job, like we were going to talk about next with Libra rising, you could be severing some communications within your work. You could be, maybe you have two jobs. A lot of times Virgo risings, if the midheaven is in the 10th, they will have two careers, two jobs, two things that they're juggling or more, okay? Because they often tend to be really hard workers. You could be saying, I can only handle one of these. One of these roles has to go. And that's giving me a little bit of an identity crisis. So that could be part of the experience there. I know another Virgo rising, Madonna, is releasing an album today with the Mars-Uranus conjunction on her midheaven, which is kind of interesting. So her role might be shifting and changing. The way that we view her has always been shifting on some level. One of the things that Madonna has, the way that she's created longevity in her career is by sort of like how David Bowie does this. They are able to morph into something different over time instead of continuously just doing the same thing. They ride the wave. They ride the tide of what is popular or what is shifting. And there's a potential that Madonna has been able to engage with a zeitgeist, I guess you could say. And we'll see how popular it is. We'll see what role she's playing as someone who's in her 60s now, instead of someone who is releasing albums in her 20s, 30s, 40s, etc. That role might be shifting. Okay. So let's go to Libra rising. Libra rising, here we have the Mercury retrograde in the 10th house. It is hosting the Mars-Uranus conjunction in the 9th and hosting the 12th house. So we had our resident Libra rising here in the chat. Taku has been talking about searching for a new job, putting in new job applications and things of that nature. So 10th house is associated with praxis and what we do publicly, what we're known for. Our public reputation could be changing. I believe our friend Devin also is a Libra rising, so there's also things going on there. It could be about reevaluating how you show up publicly. Could be trying to find a new job. It could be asking questions about your role and taking on the mantle of leadership and responsibility. It could be helping you to reduce fears of inadequacy, okay? Because you're questioning how much you give as a public person, how much you are receiving. And with Virgo in the 12th house there could be this feeling of, I don't have enough skills. I don't have enough information. I don't have enough wisdom yet to do something out in this field. And to be able to reduce that with the South Node there and ask the questions that come up and create a new narrative around it could lead to you severing some old belief systems, some old attachments to old beliefs with Mars and Uranus in the 9th house in Gemini. It could lead to severing some attachments to some spiritual tradition that wasn't working for you. Sometimes we get a distorted perspective from experiencing spiritual abuse in our youth or spiritual trauma. And maybe there is some kind of perspective that came from an orthodox way of doing something that needed to be changed, that needed to be eliminated. Maybe there were, I would assume, and this isn't necessarily true for everybody because there's multiple factors, but oftentimes I would guess with having Mercury ruling the Gemini ninth house that Libra risings have some flexibility in their spiritual beliefs. Maybe they have a lot of different ways of viewing the world. Maybe they practice multiple religious perspectives and traditions. And maybe some of those just aren't compatible with one another. Maybe there's something where you have to actually pare some of that down and eliminate one thing that just isn't in alignment with what you're trying to do. And that may be shocking to people around you. You may have to say, no, I actually, this is my firm belief. I'm not actually believing in like 10 different things. Here is where my truth is. And that might be a little scary for Libra rising, because what it does is it puts you in the spotlight as far as saying, this is what I believe, rather than relating to someone else's belief system. And this could be painful because Saturn's moving through your 7th house and you're having to really change your relationships to other people. But I would say allow yourself to ask the questions of how to create more harmony and balance within how you show up emotionally for people in your life. You know, it's okay to receive some help too. I think that's the other thing that Libra risings can struggle with at times. Devin says, definitely been dealing with giving and receiving around my practice. Yes, me too, friend. It's not an easy thing. As the Cancerian archetype is a nurturing one that is, sometimes it's difficult for us to ask for help, you know. Devin says, I've also been working with my North Node Gemini recently and learning more Vedic tendencies. Interesting, right? There you go. So learning new, orthodox techniques, right? More Vedic orthodox type of ways of engaging with your spirituality. Devin says, part of being a social balancing apparatus is that you need to understand other people's perspective, 9th house, in order to craft harmony. I agree with that, right? But inevitably, we will run into people we don't agree with, you know, and that might be happening at some point for some Libra risings out there, where there's somebody whose belief systems just do not mesh with theirs, and you have to kind of say, I just can't, I'm not down with that perspective, you know. And we do this on this channel a little bit. I was thinking about this the other day, like thinking about the rising sign horoscopes and the difference between, like, for example, a Gemini 9th house and an Aries 9th house. As a Leo rising, for example, I'm willing to fight for my beliefs. There's something where I say, not to say that you aren't. I've seen you fight for your beliefs. So that is not an all-encompassing statement. But a lot of Leo risings will say, this is something I believe. I'm willing to go to battle and war over it. And it is a very individualistic type of perspective. And maybe with Libra risings, it is more of a flexible type of thing where you're trying to see your beliefs from other people's perspectives. That doesn't mean that one way of being is more right than the other. Sometimes a Leo rising will get themselves in trouble by going to war over their beliefs all the time. I've been dealing with another Leo rising in my life who's having some difficulties going to battle over their beliefs publicly. And a lot of my advice is maybe we don't have to fight every single battle. As an older Leo rising, a little bit longer in the tooth, who has fought many battles and lost, you know, and saying, hey, let's live to fight another day, you know. So these are questions that could come up, thinking about how we engage with these different things. Let's see. Ava is here. Ava Sabello, nice to see you. Hi, Spencer. This is Shamsa. Nice to see you, Shamsa. Finally got a chance to log in live. Always great to follow your channel and listen to your updates. I appreciate that, friend. Thank you, Shamsa. Appreciate you being here. And thank you for reaching out and let me know you're here. I really makes me feel great when I get to hear people's feedback in the comment section and know that people are engaging with the material and benefiting from it. And just, it's nice to feel that connection. So thank you for reaching out today, friend. Devin says, oh yeah, my Mars is strong in Scorpio in the 2nd house of values with my moon. Yes. Yeah, so that could mitigate some of those flexible belief things, right? Your values are really strong and you're willing to fight for your values, Devin. So that's something, like I said, there is nuance to this. This is why I don't really always enjoy doing this type of rising sign horoscope, because there is a lot of nuance. And what you might be experiencing with the interaction with your own personal chart is very different than what some other Libra rising could be experiencing. So the specificity of astrology, I have difficulty with the reductionist of it, but we're just attempting something new here, so we'll experiment. Kate says, I love that you're leaning into other traditions of astrology. Yeah. Devin likes to lean into, he's bringing in some Vedic techniques. I've been starting to explore that. I think that's a natural progression. A lot of people will start out with modern astrology or popular astrology, and then they'll gravitate towards either a Renaissance or a traditional form or a Hellenistic form. Eventually, sometimes they get curious about Vedic, because Vedic is an even older, unbroken tradition. The Hellenistic astrology, went through a transformation that was lost and then rediscovered, and that can lead to problems in translation of ancient texts. But the Vedic tradition remained generally intact for 2,000 plus years, and that makes it really attractive to people who are trying to go towards fundamental concepts, and it's a natural progression. So I think it's something I'm curious about eventually too. Devin says, at least with the rising signs, we can at least point to someone to the right part of the map. I like that. And that's a good reason to do it. Good reason to do it. Okay, let's keep going. Let's go to Scorpio rising. Scorpio rising. Let's move the chart around. Let's put it in the middle. There we go. If you are Scorpio rising, this Mercury retrograde is happening in your 9th house. It is hosting the Mars-Uranus conjunction in your 8th. And it is also providing questions, resources, challenges for your 11th house. Okay. So you also, Scorpio rising, may be asking a lot of questions about higher education, about your belief systems, about your participation in orthodox religious systems. It could be about your strongly held, almost religious beliefs around taking care of others and around nurturing, and whether you're giving or receiving in a balanced and harmonious way. This could lead you to making some cuts in the way that you support other people or in the way that you are supported. It may require you to be either more independent without receiving benefits from someone else, or it could lead to you like saying, I'm not going to support you in this way. Do you see what I'm saying? This could also be leading to conscious discussions about your involvement in groups or in people that you share belief systems with. You've probably had to release your attachment to some friend groups or to some professional groups in the recent past, potentially. But you do have the two benefics moving through your 10th house that are leading to maybe some new starts, some new visibility, and things of that nature. You might have to eliminate some of the debt that you have too with the Mars-Uranus conjunction in the 8th house. There could be a realization that you have to sever a credit that is dragging you down, or like a credit card debt or something like that. You say, you know what, I need to get rid of this credit card debt, or I need to refinance this mortgage or something like that. That could be something. 9th house is also related to the legal system. So there could be a legal case that is being reevaluated around this time that could be severing your financial relationship with somebody else. That is another thing to look out for if you are Scorpio rising. Sagittarius rising. Okay, Sag risings. We have some Sag risings here with us today that we were speaking to earlier. We've got an 8th house Mercury retrograde hosting the Mars-Uranus conjunction in the 7th. Okay. And we have it hosting the 10th house of Virgo. Okay. So 8th house, shared resources. Again, giving and receiving, emotional nurturing. Questions of abundance versus scarcity coming up in the 8th house. Questions around inheritances, around debt, around loans, all of those things. This is Sagittarius rising. Sorry, I'll switch it over. Questions about loans, debts, how you are being taken care of and how you take care of others. It could lead to a severing in distractions in your relationships. It could lead to some difficult communications in your relationships. All right. It could also lead to a change in the way that you present yourself publicly. This is true for Sagittarius suns as well. Like my Sagittarius sun partner and I had like a little bit of a testy conversation yesterday about roles in our relationship and our finances and things like that. Eventually it calmed down. We're finding solutions. But this is also the difficult conversations that could lead to different ways of showing up publicly. Like my partner and I both are being tasked with showing up publicly more, even though it's very difficult for us. We're both 12th house suns. We're both a little bit skeptical of the tech bro industrial complex, I guess. And that sometimes makes it difficult to show up on these platforms in ways that would drive traffic. So this could be true for you Sag risings too, that there could be some difficult conversations with partners. There could be some elimination of distractions that come up. It could be just an elimination of an open enemy, that maybe helps lead to feeling more balanced in how you share resources with others. Kate says 8th house Mars, Uranus, Gemini makes me think of diversifying and alternate high risk investing. Yeah, I could see that. You don't want to keep all your eggs in one basket for sure. So that could be asking a lot of questions around that as well. I could see that being part of the equation. Absolutely. And yeah, this was part of a conversation that I was having yesterday too. How do we diversify where we're bringing in income or things like that? Like, it's a good time to ask questions about how we get our needs met. I think that's the thing. And if you can keep it civil and if you can keep it productive, and if you're having trouble, if something gets out of control, if things get heated, I know just in general, it's been just like literally very hot and people have been very uncomfortable where I'm at. And that just makes everyone's tempers flare a little bit easier and makes the fuse shorter. How do you know when to take a time out too? Like this was something that was really important in my relationship, is when we started to butt up against a brick wall in our communication, we finally just had to say, let's take a time out. We're not going to solve this all in one day. Let's go to our respective corners for a minute and cool off, and we'll come back with a new perspective. And once we did that, we were fine, And those are the types of things that you have to be able to do during a Mars-Uranus conjunction, is know when the communication could be shockingly damaging to take a time out. Healthy relationships are able to call a pause to those types of things. And I think that's something that's important for everyone during this Mercury retrograde. Okay, let's go forward to Capricorn rising. Okay. Capricorn rising. So Cap rising, you've got this Mercury retrograde in your 7th house. It is hosting Mars Uranus in the 6th of Gemini and the 9th of Virgo. And again, conversations with partners, about relationships, about giving and receiving in relationships, maybe changing belief systems around your role within them or everybody's role, maybe leading to a severing of having to feel like you have to carry the burden for everyone all the time. This was part of our conversation yesterday. If I'm just being very real and about my life, my Capricorn rising partner has been carrying the weight of our financial life for a long time. And for a number of reasons, they just had the type of job to do so, and it allowed me a lot of freedom to not compromise on some of my values or to do things in a way that was more comfortable, which I'm very grateful for. I can't begin to verbalize how appreciative I am of what my partner has done for the last however many years we've been together. And just she was on the front lines of when COVID was happening, she was out in the world. Like, she masked every day going to her job, like for 5 years. Just a lot of sacrifices that were made to be supportive. And I know that there are other Cap risings out there who have done similar things, who have taken on the weight and mantle of physical responsibility because they care about people, because they are trying to do the Saturnian right thing and doing things that are hard that not everybody can do. And this is probably a time for you Cap risings with Saturn and Aries. It's Saturn in its fall in a really invisible place, in the 4th house, in a very personal place, where you might be forced to be making a new start. That circumstances might be changing. You might have to take more of your own needs into account, and you might just be really exhausted, and you need some help from your partner. You need them to shift their roles, to shift the exchanges. You might need to sever some of the burdens that you're carrying with 6th house Gemini, Uranus conjunction with Mars. That could lead to a more healthy perspective out in the world, where you don't feel like you have to take on every single role of responsibility. And I'm witnessing this with my partner. I'm trying to participate in being part of the solution. And it's not easy. It's not easy when we get in a rut. I think that a lot of us, when we are faced with change, we get into a rut and we try to do things that have always worked. In her case, she was just, a lot of times people told her what to do and she did it, and she didn't have to think about continually self-directing. And in my case, like, I just have been kind of going along and doing what I've been doing. And I didn't necessarily have to think about increasing my financial situation, because that part of the equation was taken care of. But when those circumstances change, roles and relationships change. So your relational life will be changing, Capricorn rising. And I'm just speaking from experience. Like, you may have to learn how to receive. And the people who are in your life, such as myself, and the people who are in your Capricorn rising life, need to learn how to bring better balance to that. And it's a process, and experimenting with new things, I think, can be really fortuitous when it comes to that. Okay. Karen says, definitely resonating for Sag rising. Relationship give and take issues for sure. Cap Sun too. Thank you. Yes. And again, as part of the equation of a Cap rising relationship, as the relationship house partner, I would encourage all of you who have Capricorn suns and Capricorn risings in your life to don't take that energy that they provide for granted. Don't take the structural stabilizing energy for granted, because what I'm seeing is sometimes the Capricorn archetype, it can almost appear like superheroes to us Cancer types. Like, I just can't do what she does. Like, she's so strong, you know what I mean? And I'm sure, Karen, you're really strong. Like, I bet you can carry the burden of doing hard things more so than other people in your life. And for those of us whose constitutions are a little bit more just sensitive and get easily overwhelmed, it just looks like magic. But every sign, every rising sign has vulnerabilities. And everything that appears stable and strong, every castle that's built in the sand eventually washes away into the sea, eventually, as Jimi Hendrix would say. And even things that look stable and strong have their own entropy points. So how do we start to bring greater balance to the people that are our pillars of strength? By becoming that, by meeting them halfway. And I think this is the conversation that a lot of people are having with their Capricorn types, or their Capricorn types are having with other people in their life as well. Okay, Aquarius rising. Let's go forward. All right, so Aquarius rising, you've got Mercury retrograde in the 6th house, and it is hosting Mars, Uranus in the 5th, and it is providing fodder for your 8th house. This Mercury retrograde for Aquarius risings is happening in the 6th house, related to health, wellness, things of that nature. Yeah, Kate says, it really does look like magic. It does. It does. I don't know what else to tell you. It's kind of a miracle. Kate says they just have adulting down so hard that it's admirable. Yeah, it's a hard, sometimes it's a hard standard to live up to. I often am amazed at the amount of endurance that my partner has for things that she doesn't want to do. And as a Leo rising, Kate, I don't have a ton of, I don't almost have any endurance for doing things I don't want to do. And that's hard. And I think that the way that we complement those people in our life is learning how to do some of the hard things and take away some of their burden. I think that's the key, is how do we alleviate some of their burden instead of taking it for granted? And that's where we find the change, right? Karen says it takes its toll deep inside, and by the time it hits critical mass, I'm imploding. My Libra moon doesn't help that very much. Right. I hear that. And again, sometimes what looks like a strength, it's easy for other people to take that for granted and then just get used to it. And then when you can't carry those burdens anymore, it's like the people are shocked because they're like, wow, I thought you had that locked down. And when they don't, it's a whole different question that comes up. Yeah. Kate says, you need Mercury retrograde spa day. Yeah, Kate does. Take a spa day, Kate. Like, you've earned it. So is my partner. So if I have to become a little bit tougher, like, I think that's the thing. I don't always have the greatest boundaries. I tend to have this, like, I want everything to be available to everyone. I want everybody to be able to engage with this. I don't want to put up paywalls and things like that. And that is wonderful in an idealistic world. But the Capricorn in your life will say, hey, brother, everyone needs some healthy boundaries sometimes. Everyone needs to be supported. You can't just keep doing this without bringing in some resources. Is your time invested getting a return? And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting all sorts of relationship validation, and I'm getting all sorts of wisdom shared. And they're like, in their minds, they're like, is it tangible? Like, and so those are the questions that come up when you have to ask those things. Like, that's the difference between when you have like water signs and earth signs and things of that nature. You have to ask the tangible return questions sometimes. It's not a weak point for the earth person, and it's not a weak point for the water person. Like, they are complementary, but there has to be balance between the two. All right. So Aquarius rising, 6th house, dealing with, and we call the 6th house a health house. It is, but it's the joy of Mars. It was called Malus 2K, bad fortune. I think that we can more consider it related to injury and illness that we're dealing with, rather than just strictly a health house. Sometimes we're reevaluating our relationship to how we deal with things in our life that we didn't anticipate, that aren't necessarily positive. The 6th house also speaks to something that's pulling us away from completion. So you may be reevaluating, Aquarius rising, what pulls you away from completing something? What pulls you away from relationships? Is it injuries? Is it illnesses? Is it too much work behind the scenes that you don't get credit for, since it has a relationship to the 10th house, but it is in aversion to the ascendant? You could be giving or receiving too much labor behind the scenes that is draining you. It could be leading to also questions with your health. Maybe you had an injury or an illness based on overly engaging in something that brings you pleasure. Maybe it's a substance challenge. Like a lot of times we see with this severing and separating, maybe you think, just like we had the examples earlier with the going out and partying with friends, it could be that something that you're consuming, whether it's information or whether it's a substance, is not making your body feel very good. And you finally like, I can't do this anymore. I have to sever and separate from this thing that I thought was pleasurable, but is not really bringing me satisfaction moving forward. And this could also be related to shared resources. Maybe there's something that you've been pursuing pleasure-wise that is bringing you pressure through a partnership. Maybe it's because a partner is somebody who engages with those types of things, whatever it is. And there could be some pressure with that. And you're reevaluating whether that's healthy or not. Aquarius rising is another one that has Saturn in its fall right now in the 3rd house. So a lot of this could be triggered from having a real difficult relationship in your local environment, or with siblings, or with neighbors. You might be having to strike out on your own and become more independent in those relationships, or with friends. And that could be another factor within this as well. And not to mention Pluto's grinding over your ascendant. So lots of changes happening. And the nodes are about to shift into the north node into your 1st, south node into your 7th. All sorts of things that could be leading to differing identities moving forward. All right, finally, we'll wrap up with Pisces rising. Okay. Karen says, yes, boundaries are healthy. Still learning that, even as a Cap. True. Sometimes the boundaries can be what isolates us too. Sometimes we can have too many walls up that we need to lower. Or sometimes Capricorns, they don't have enough boundaries in the right areas of life. Maybe they're really isolated and cut off and have good boundaries in one area of life, but other areas it could be a struggle. Maybe you're a Capricorn, but you have Saturn in Cancer or Saturn in Leo. That's a difficult place for Saturn, which sometimes has difficulties with boundaries. So there are all sorts of different factors. There's lots of nuances. Devin says, the earth signs teach us where we need stones and fortification. Yes. And Kate says, exactly. I agree. And you know what? When we're in relationships, oftentimes some of the healthiest ones are with people that aren't exactly like us. I know that when I have a lot in common with my partner, but when we first got together, there were some things that were very different that I had a lot of questions about. But I've learned over the, 16 years that we've been together, that they have forced us to grow. Both of us we've been forced to grow. I've been forced to grow in my relationship to material reality through her ability to engage with it. She's been forced to grow in her emotional intelligence and in her acknowledging her feelings through being in a relationship with someone who's pretty in touch with his feelings for the most part and pretty comfortable expressing them. So the reason we have relationships is to grow and to test each other. So even if you're struggling with some particular issue within one, try to see it as a gateway into understanding and growth. All right, so Pisces rising, let's finish this off. And then we'll do a hexagram and an I-Ching, and we'll wrap for the day. What do you say? Pisces rising, you have the Mercury retrograde in your 5th house. It is hosting the Mars-Uranus severing and separating in the 4th, and providing questioning and resources for your 7th house and partnerships. 5th house, children, how we seek pleasure, legacies that we want to pass on, personal creativity, good fortune that comes to you without necessarily doing anything. That's called Agatha Tukey, from chance. You might be questioning the good fortune that you've received in your life. You may be questioning the nurturing that you've been giving to your legacy. Sometimes that's children, sometimes it's creative projects. It may be leading you to some realizations that cause you to sever connections with family, that's cause you just to reevaluate your living situation with Mars and Uranus in the 4th house. Could be that you're eliminating distractions within your home, potentially. As I've become a convert for these loop earbuds, I had a Gemini rising friend. I know this is Pisces rising, but he has some really noisy kids. I'm like, maybe you need to get these earplugs so you could turn the volume down on the screaming in the background. And he laughed, but he's like, they'll just scream louder. but maybe there will be something in your life where you can turn the volume down on something, right? Where you can eliminate a distraction within your home life or with your parents or something like that. Pisces rising. You just had a big shift too with your ruler of your ascendant, Jupiter, moving out of its exaltation in the 5th house and into Leo in the 6th. So a lot of the focus is shifting towards, work behind the scenes, shifting towards, health issues. Maybe the greater benefic in the house of good fortune is moving out of the house of good fortune and moving into the house of more challenging fortune. So that could be a shift. This could be having an effect on your partnerships and the way that you relate. You could be having similar conversations, but from a different perspective about roles within relationships. It might not be as pointed as having, like, let's say, Mercury retrograde in the 7th house. It could be that you're shifting roles in your relationship in regards to taking care of your kids, or shifting roles in your relationship around how you seek pleasure in the relationship. It could be having conversations about sex or things like that in the relationship. Like, oftentimes the communication is really important when it comes to these types of issues. If we're not feeling satisfied in the way that we're relating, we have to talk about it. And sometimes when you just verbalize something, it helps you to get what you want, and it helps the other person understand how to give in a way that will create mutual beneficial relationships. Could be sexuality, could be, how we play board games. Like it's something like that. Like it doesn't have to be, tawdry. It could be just ways that we enjoy ourselves. Okay. So Pisces rising, have the conversations about how you seek pleasure, how you take care of each other, and how you take care of your children, your legacies. Eliminate distractions within your home life, and deal with communication issues with your family gently, and then you'll get through it. All right. We did it. We did it, friends. We got through all 12 signs. That's the other thing that sometimes I struggle with doing rising sign horoscopes. It just sometimes feels a little repetitive, but hopefully you got some good information about that. Thank you for sitting and trying something new with me. Let's go back to the hexagram. Okay, so I'm going to share this hexagram with you. This is our Mercury in Cancer. We've got great accumulation. 26, changing to number 1, the dynamic, and a very yang hexagram. So great accumulation. I asked, what is the essence of Mercury retrograde in Cancer in 2026? Great accumulation also translates to great amassing, but also great restraint, great caretaking, storing up, preparation, gathering knowledge, cultivating your abilities, improving yourself. The judgment says great accumulation, it is beneficial to persevere. Not eating at home brings good fortune. It is beneficial to cross the great river. Okay. The theme of this hexagram is storing up and developing energy and resources for future use. Hence, it is beneficial to persevere in marshaling your resources and developing your abilities. Cultivating a determined and steadfast character is essential, because if you wish to remain at the height of your powers, you will need to hone your skills continually and renew yourself daily. Not eating at home refers to persons of great ability and talent who advised rulers in ancient China and lived with them as their honored guests. Here, it means that good fortune will come from working for the public good rather than for private advantage. Devote yourself to the perfection of your talents and the achievement of something beyond your narrow self-interest, and you will have both the power and the vision to achieve great things, symbolized by crossing the great river. All right, so let's look at the changing lines here. There's 2 of them. The 4th place, it says a horn guard for the young bull, supreme good fortune. A horn guard is a headboard that is attached to a young bull's forehead so that when its horns grow, they cannot harm others. This line contains 3 lessons. First, the best way to deal with problems is to prevent them from happening in the first place. Think ahead. Okay, so this is encouraging us to think ahead. We may have to review to think ahead. It says anticipate difficulties. Take action now to prevent troubles from occurring, or if they have already begun, deal with them when they are still small and easy to manage. Second, restrain and guide the aspirations and abilities of those in your charge and curb any bad tendencies so that people can make the most of their talents. Third, make a virtue of necessity. Instead of squandering your resources on premature adventures, hold back and develop your potential. This Mercury retrogrades require patience, okay? Hold back and develop your potential, and you will be stronger later on. Circumstances that seem to restrain you from action may often, like the horn guard of a young bull, actually aid in your growth. This same advice applies to your own inner development. Deal with faults in yourself when they are still minor ones and easier to remedy. Put yourself in situations where you can foster healthy behaviors and constructive habits. Build up your strength to deal with obstacles ahead. Cultivate your character continuously, and you will not have to make superhuman efforts to succeed. Success will come naturally from your everyday activities. Now we have one more changing line. It says, the tusks of a gelded boar, good fortune. A wild boar is dangerous and uses its tusks to harm others. Now this might be the Mars in Gemini part, potentially. But if the boar is gelded, it becomes docile and less likely to do damage because it no longer desires to. In the same way, one should geld evils and difficulties to eradicate them or restrain them so that they do not do harm, instead of trying to combat them directly. When you find yourself faced with a wild and impulsive force, do not attack it directly. Now, here is Mercury and Cancer advice. You may have to circumnavigate the issue, right? A crab will move sideways, backwards, forwards. It will sometimes, water will spill around the issue after gaining in strength, okay? It says, when you find yourself faced with a wild and impulsive force, do not attack it directly, for this will merely exacerbate the problem. Avoid overt confrontation. Instead, look for underlying causes of the difficulty. Consider how you might cut off the source of the problem at its roots so that you can restrain and rechannel its energies. An indirect approach may prove more effective than a frontal assault and will bring you more success and good fortune. And this is leading to the dynamic, activity, creativity, dynamic force, decisiveness, strong action, going forward. It's very young. It's a very young hexagram. Okay. The judgment says, let's see, the dynamic, supreme success. It is beneficial to persevere. The Book of Changes begins with the dynamic principle, which has 4 basic attributes. It is the number 1, fundamental, sublime, originating, and supreme. Number 2, successful, bestowing power. Number 3, beneficial, advantageous, and morally appropriate. And number 4, persevering, determined, steadfast, and upright. These are the 4 virtues of the Book of Changes. The 4 Chinese words for these attributed are often used to represent the 4 seasons, and virtually anything that can be divided into 4. Let's see. The 4 virtues are usually paired fundamental with successful and beneficial with persevering. Thus, the text says that dynamic action will help you achieve supreme success, and it is beneficial to persevere. That is, to keep moving forward. To conduct yourself in accordance with the nature of the times, you must make the 4 virtues your own. Attend to what is basic and fundamental, and persevere in what is beneficial and morally upright. The text enjoins you to use your creative power for good, to bring order out of chaos, beauty out of squalor, and peace out of tumult, and justice out of injustice. The sexagram signifies that you are in a very favorable situation to take the right approach. This is not a time to hold back. Rather, you must make strong, decisive action. Seize the initiative. Go out into the world and make a difference. Be creative. Look for fresh and original ways to solve your problems. It is time to try something new and bold. If you move forward now with confidence, others will have confidence in you. If you're willing to act on your beliefs and stand up for what you believe in it, for what you believe is right, people will look up to you and follow you. Your energy and enthusiasm will inspire them, and this will help you achieve your goals. Have faith in yourself and maintain a positive attitude. You have every reason to be optimistic, and the more optimistic and enthusiastic you are about your project, the more you will help ensure your ultimate success. All right, so that seems to be an action after holding back, marshaling our resources. Then we can move forward with energy. It feels like when Mercury starts to move forward again, emerges from under the beams, we've got a Jupiter Cazimi. We have passion because we have eliminated our ambivalence, our jadedness. We have balanced out imbalances in giving and receiving, and we can move forward with confidence. Okay. Oh, let's see. You're welcome, Karen. Thank you, friend. Appreciate you. So, one more thing before we wrap for the day. I've got an animal for you. And it's very Mercury in Cancer. It's the whale. All right? So the whale is, it's a water animal. They're great communicators. Let's read about the whale. in Animal Frequency by Melissa Alvarez. What do you say? Let's find the whale. This is a humpback whale that we're seeing here. There's many different types of whales. Whales symbolize the vibrational energy and connection to spirit. Whales can live a long time. The oldest discovered is thought to be 211 years old, but scientists believe whales can live even longer. Its longevity is linked to wisdom and ancient knowledge. Whale enjoys singing and will create new songs if they get bored with the old ones. Okay, so how do we create a new song in our life? Whale songs can become popular and spread from one group of whales to another. This is directly related to your own creative nature. You never know when something you create will become the next popular craze. Whales have talents for agility, creativity, emotional depth, gracefulness, imagination, insight, intuition, longevity, movement, passion, sensitivity, socialness, strength, and swiftness. They have challenges around instability, reclusiveness, and being withdrawn. When whale appears, it means you're going through a time of transformation and enlightenment. Your intuition, creativity, and innate knowledge are growing rapidly during this time. It can be overwhelming. Whale means you remain balanced as you move through these positive changes with graceful fluidity. Thought-provoking ideas will come to you, making you search deeper for answers. It's time to learn and grow and to express what you're feeling in your new knowledge. This isn't time for remaining quiet, but for open discussion, singing, and happiness. Whale encourages you to put your intuition to the test by actively using it. Through use, the accuracy will increase. This is important to you, especially if you've doubted your abilities. You tend to stay to yourself at times and you only let people see what you want to see when it comes to your personal life. If someone makes it into your close circle of friends, they will then have access to you on a deep, intimate soul level. Whale means you often say prophetic things even without realizing you're doing it. By becoming aware of whale's message of spiritual growth, you can learn to tap into your own intuitive nature and have a better understanding of what you're seeing and feeling. This will enable you to pass along intuitive messages in a more precise way. This animal will assist you when you need to be inspired. The whale is able to dive into great depths and soar above the ocean. This means that you can look deep inside for inspiration and then rise to great heights. I like that for this Mercury retrograde because we're going into the psychopomp underworld type of experience, into our unconscious, subconscious minds, and then we can bring it out into the world like whales breaching, right? Or we're showing it to the world, what we've determined from doing that hard inner work. Whale can help you find the creative venue that is best for you on your life path. Do you enjoy music, writing, drawing, or painting? Maybe you are great at motivating others, teaching classes, or helping others understand themselves better. Let's see. All of these are ways that you can embrace your creativity and share it with the world. If you're having family problems, Whale encourages you to reach out with love to resolve issues quickly. Whales are very social animals with deep family ties and friendships. All right, so get in touch with your creativity. Figure out what your own unique song is. Whales communicate through singing. Maybe we need to sing a little bit more. Maybe we need to play a little bit more in our life, right? Maybe we need to communicate with feeling rather than just with the words themselves, with just rationality. Maybe we need to say something in a way that is charged with positive emotion to get people to understand us. Maybe we need to give them a hug. Maybe we need to write them a song or a poem. These are the other things that we can do to communicate with others and to communicate our truth in life. So I hope that will serve you well. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Stella. There we go. I love the whale symbols there. Whales are really cool. I've seen whales breach on a whale watch. And I was a kid. I went on a whale watch in Massachusetts with my uncle, and it was really cool. It was a fun experience. Beautiful, beautiful animals. All right, friends. That's what I've got for you. Have a wonderful afternoon. Have a wonderful Mercury retrograde period. Try to take your time exploring. Ask the right questions. Try to bring balances to your areas of scarcity and surplus. Communicate your own unique song. Recognize that by doing this hard work during the Mercury retrograde cycle, it should allow you to be able to express your more authentic self moving forward in a very positive and creative way. And take it easy. Be kind to the Capricorn type archetypes in your life. Give them a big hug. Take care of their burdens a little bit sometimes. Alleviate the suffering of others. figure out with this Mercury retrograde, what do you have to give? I think that's really the essence of Cancer 3 is sharing. It's really like, where can we become the most generous? So all of the things I've talked about with your rising sign today is an opportunity for you to become more generous. You know, whether it's with your time, whether it's with your resources, whether it's in your relationships, how do you become more generous? And that doesn't necessarily just mean physical resources, although it can mean that. If you have been giving emotionally and giving time, maybe you need to become more resourceful. If you have not been giving your time or your emotional resources, maybe that's time to soften and to be able to give more of that. There are so many things that you can share that will make you and others feel abundant and wealthy. And this is a great time to ask questions as to what you really have to give, right? Not what you what you need. I mean, you do need to ask those questions too. But if you solely focus on what you need and don't ask the equally important question of what you have to give, you'll find an imbalance, okay? So what do you have to give? What do you need to receive? And how do you balance the two? And that will bring you into alignment, I think. All right. Javiera, it's nice to see you. Have a great Mercury retrograde. I hope that everything's going well with you, and that the Gemini, part of you is getting the nice give and take it needs. Karen, thank you for being here. Thank you for all your wonderful comments today. And take a load off, Karen, and give some of your burdens to some of the other people in your life. It's okay. You're allowed to. Karen says this was great. Thank you so much for all you do. Appreciate you, friend. Carol says thank you. Thank you, Carol. Appreciate you, friend. Thank you for checking in. I love seeing some new faces in the chat here. Appreciate you, friend. Chad was here. Says, I have a grand sextile forming in your chart. I love that for you, Chad. I love that. That sounds like it's going to be fortuitous. So be open to receiving some good fortune with that. Taku says thank you. Thank you, Taku. Appreciate you. All right, friends. That's what I've got. Have a great weekend. Have a great, Mars Uranus. You give Mars a job to do, okay? Turn down the noise in your life. Eliminate some distractions. Take care of the people that you love. Give Mars a job to do. Try to eliminate some of the things that disrupt your nervous system. If you can do that, you're going to navigate this whole Mars Uranus thing a lot more gracefully. Okay? Get yourself some loop earbuds, turn down the noise, or whatever works for you. Meditation, turn down the noise. All right, friends. We'll see you the next time. Hopefully we'll see you next week. I'll have a whole new Time Lord. It'll be Mercury by the time I see you next. Thanks for the birthday wishes today, moving into my birthday next week. And appreciate all of you. And by the time I see you next, I'll be in an 11th house perfection. And hopefully we'll have some good fortune with Venus there. All right. Take care, friends. Peace.